Hereby call this meeting of the Seneca Falls Zoning Board of Appeals to order this 28th day of May, 2020. I'd like to introduce, or take a roll call, I should say, on members, if you could respond with an aye. Joe Cordero.
Aye.
Susan Savageau.
Aye.
Mary Kelleher.
Aye.
Tom Scholes.
Aye.
Tim Hopkins.
Aye.
Frank DeJohn.
Here.
We also have Code Enforcement Officer Dean Zettelmoyer and our attorney Patrick Morrell, recording secretary Melissa Howell. Our first order of business would be the minutes of the last meeting, if you've all read them. That's what you all have.
Yeah.
There's one, is everyone good with 53 Bridge Street? Is there any corrections to the minutes there?
On the first page, at the bottom, there's a motion that was unanimous, but you left my name out. So,
Motion carried was unanimous.
yeah.
And you're
Everybody
not-
else is.
And you're not in it?
Yeah, I'm not in it.
Here, I'll check with the report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other corrections on 53 Bridge Street? None. Let's move on to 201 Claw Street. Does anyone acknowledge any correction there? And there is one, but I want to ask my board if they have any others. The question to be made is this is referring to as a use variance, and it should be a special use permit. Correct, Pat?
Yes, and that was the subject of an email that I hope everybody received.
So I wanted to make that correction. That should be, there's a difference between the two, of course.
It will be amended.
So we changed that to a special use permit on that. Being as there's no other corrections I get from my board, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes. So moved. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I need a second.
And it's
Yeah.
passed.
I'll second. And then we'll aye.
Our first order of business, first applicant, with affecting the applicant project is at 81 West Bayard Street. And the applicant, Kingsley Kabari, Dr. Kingsley Kabari.
Yes. Thank you.
This is special use permit for a second floor multifamily apartment. Pat?
I believe this is a use variance. Yes, this is
Yeah.
a use variance.
I'm sorry, yes. A use variance, yes. I've got down in my notes here, special permit.
The original one was a special permit. His original application to make a commercial area. Because it was a teaching facility and it is a school and continued to be a teaching facility with his new
I
endeavor.
think I see where we're going. Yes, use permit. Sorry, I'm reading it off this document that I have. That's for a use permit, application for a use permit, use variance, excuse me. So I'd like to call on the applicant, if I could, Mr. Kabari, to explain the project.
Okay. We have worked on the first floor. Initially, we were to use it for commercial, mixed commercial building for more of a wellness center. And we have maximized the first floor and everything that we wanted to do. Then we get left with 5 rooms upstairs that we can no longer use for the commercial spaces that we wanted to do. And the businesses we have in there right now so far cannot generate enough income to support that building, to pay taxes, and for the building to function. So we thought we'd convert the second floor, those 5 rooms there, to apartments. And that's why I'm asking for the use variance support.
Dean, do you have anything that you could offer on this,
As far as,
anything at all, I guess? I'm just sitting in notes just to ask if there's anything that you could contribute at all, just kind of
I think
protocol thing.
he's looking to put 8 apartments into the 5 existing upstairs, cutting some of the rooms in half, making 2-bedroom and a couple 1-bedrooms, right?
Yeah, 2 of the classrooms will be 2 bedrooms. The other 3 will be split into a single bedroom, so total of 8 on the second floor.
Okay. Pat, anything you'd like to?
Just that this is a use variance. So you have the 4 tests of the use variance to consider here. You have, this was reviewed by the town planning board at last night's meeting. They were recommending approval with the condition that the residential uses at this property be limited to the 2nd floor and be limited to 8 units. Was it 8 units that they said?
Yeah, 8 units, yes.
Yeah, okay. So that'll be in their minutes, but it was from last night. So that's their recommendation. I did not see any recommendation from the county on this. Is there a county review?
Would have to speak
There was
with
a
them.
town review, but there wasn't a form.
Okay, so they did not take action on it?
Correct.
Okay. So there you go. So this is here for a public hearing for this use variance, and prior to taking action, the board would have to complete the state environmental quality review as well.
Can I suggest that we do the statement of hardship one by one before we even do that to see if he qualifies?
Sure.
I agree with number 1, that he feels that it doesn't make enough income at the commercial level, correct? And that's why you want to add the apartments.
Correct.
And you feel that the expense of to put those apartments in will pay for themselves by the rent.
Correct.
Okay, and number 2, whether the alleged hardship relating to the property is in question is unique and does not apply to a substantial portion of the actual zoning district of the neighborhood. It is an R1, correct?
Right.
Your comment is the neighborhood already has multiple dwelling units, and you're not trying to change the neighborhood zoning. Is that true? Is there a lot of multiple dwellings in that area?
There's a multiple resident right next to the school. And of course, you get down into the bridge in Bear Street, the old Franklin Hotel. I mean, but I believe they're into a C2 or a C1. I'm not exactly sure.
I think you also have to consider that this building itself is, an old school building surrounded by a bunch of single-family residential houses. And that in and of itself, while an elementary school is an allowable use in an R1, that in and of itself makes this a unique to this property. In that so the allowable uses, unless you happen to operate a school district, the use as an elementary school isn't particularly useful. The use as a single-family house isn't suited for this property at all. And on down the line, on the other allowable uses in an R1 zone. So I think the building itself makes it unique. I think it's more exciting to look at that.
Any comments?
Excuse me.
Yes, I'm concerned mainly about the size of the apartments, because we've had all kinds of projects lately where there are one-bedroom and efficiencies in very tiny apartments. So I think we have a surplus of that type of housing. The project is appealing if they're larger, spacious apartments that maybe people with a family might want to rent, or somebody who actually wants office space in the home and so forth. So I'm concerned about the square footage of these apartments and cheering for them to be 2- and 3-bedroom apartments as opposed to.
Well, each one of these classrooms is about 1,300 square foot. With the DRI project in town, they actually were more interested in, they wanted to see an apartment go in there, so they came in and they did the whole plan laid out. It fit perfectly for, it's very spacious room for 2-bedroom, and they were able to convert it into single bedrooms in one, 2 single bedrooms in one of the classrooms. So doing the layout, everything fit perfectly.
So they have done a layout for you
They've done a layout for me, yes.
that we didn't see, but we'd like to.
Well, I brought a copy of it. I tried to print it out. I was rushing for Utica to get here. I was unable to print out the 2-bedroom layout, which is, I think I have it right here. Actually, the 1-bedroom layout, that's what I have.
And then, how many square feet is that 1-bedroom apartment?
Well, the whole classroom is about 1,300 square foot.
1,300.
1,300 square foot.
So we're talking about 650 or so.
Kind of, yeah.
And how many are you going to make singles?
I was going to use 3 classrooms and make it into, split it into 2 singles.
I agree with Susan that we're getting an influx. I would much rather see those all be 1,300 square foot apartments. That's my opinion.
Thomas, you got anything that you can?
My comment probably going to be a lot more associated with number 4. Whether this is a self-created hardship.
Kind of hard to hear everybody with these.
My comments are probably going to be a lot more zeroed in around number 4, whether this is a self-created hardship.
I agree with that too. I think that's where we probably should jump to that because number 3, it's not going to change the character that much.
No.
Self-created hardship, and that when the doctor first applied, it was for commercial use, and now
Yes.
it's multiple dwelling. We talked about as a commercial use, it'd be basically a 9 to 5 situation. Now there's going to be people there around the clock. It's basically something you self-created. Is that what you're getting at?
It is. I mean, you were before us before, and I think you were asking for a use variance at that point, but a use variance isn't something that should be easy to get from number 1, and it would be a big change in it. But we were able to figure out a way for you to be able to use that building and put that building into use by it being a special use permit, which is an allowable use. At that point, when we bought the place originally, it was a little bit of a stretch to get it to to work there and be in compliance with the zoning code. And now you're back before us asking for a different type of, not you're actually asking for a use variance into an area that is not allowed in. And so I think you really failed the self-created hardship part. Because part of the plan was those were going to be offices used to support the teaching and the educational aspect that qualified the property to be used as special use permit. So that's where I am coming up on the whole use permit. And I do think, again, it's a lot of these apartments and proposals for apartments and things that we're seeing seem like we're trying to cram an awful lot into small spaces. I think that they used to be less density, for lack of a better word. I think it is the right word.
You've tried to rent the upper to commercial with no avail?
Nobody ever able to rent it, and we, talked to other businesses, trying to pull businesses into town, and everything that's on the first floor, even upstairs to the old part, the older part of the building, was all, instead we use it, but we got 5 classrooms sitting there, doing nothing. And if we can put apartments in it, the income from there will be able to support these building standards. And paying taxes and utilities.
What's your opinion,
Yeah.
Counselor?
I'm sorry.
On
what?
self-created?
That's, on every one of these applications, that can really go either way. On the one hand, he didn't build the building, with that much space in it. However, he's trying to make a go of it. On the other hand, he didn't have to buy the building, and he did buy the building with the zoning in place and with the restrictions on. So, it can really go either way.
Mary, would you like to?
I like the idea of a mixed use, like you have downtown, but, the apartments seem to be too small to me. You can have 5 apartments in there of, the 1,300 square feet might be more reasonable. And, to that end, I don't think the self-created is that bad. I mean, like Susan mentioned, maybe somebody wants to come in, have a home office or a home business to start. I mean, it just seems that, putting 8 apartments into the 5 classrooms is just creating, a density issue again. So I'm kind of torn on that one because it's hard to say, well, too bad you can't rent it until you can find a business that wants to go in there, especially right now. And when you could have 5 decent-sized apartments with plenty of parking for that, and
Right.
maybe take advantage of, the wellness center and things like that. So I don't know.
Doctor, are you willing to make the allowance to go to 5 apartments rather than the 8?
So what you guys are suggesting, instead of a two bedroom in one of the classroom, make it one bedroom?
The other way around.
What
We're
is it?
suggesting all 2-bedroom apartments or more, and none of the 1-bedroom apartments, so that they're larger residences.
Okay, so instead of it being split it into 1 bedroom and 1 bedroom, just make it all 2 bedrooms?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you'd have 5 2-bedroom. That might.
I would accept that.
So, I mean, ultimately, it's each classroom would be its own dwelling. Okay, so, in effect, each classroom, you can, you know, if you want to have it, if somebody wants a wide open space, you can keep it as a wide open space. If you want to divvy it up so that there's 3 separate bedrooms in there, that's your business. But each one, but none of them are going to be split so that it's divided between two separate apartments, or, 2 separate families, 2 separate units. Okay, so, but as far as
Yeah.
do I have this right? I don't want to.
I think that's great. It's like a loft situation is a
Yeah.
possibility, or more rooms for a family,
To
depending.
put a family in one classroom instead of
Right,
putting 2
yeah.
different families into one classroom.
And exactly, because, I mean, I live in a downtown apartment, and my apartment is way bigger than those classrooms. So I keep seeing all these projects that come by and think, I wouldn't want to. Where would I put my stuff?
Yeah.
You know, how would I pace? That kind of thing. And I think that is the kind of housing we need. We don't need more of these minimalist tiny house situations. And the school buildings that have been developed, there is some precedent for this in Seneca Falls. There is a couple older school buildings there from an earlier era than that one, but they've been turned into very nice residential apartments.
And some of those have been combined 2 classrooms in.
Yeah, sometimes they
apartment.
use different
Different
amounts of
configurations,
space,
yeah.
but they were school buildings and now they're residences. So I think we do have some decent grounds for going that way.
All right. My own take on this is that in the statement of hardship, I'm a stickler for the competent financial evidence is indicated on the first requirement. And what I'm seeing is a statement here. I'd rather have dollars and cents as to how this project is going to proceed. And the reason I say that for is because originally, as Tom had pointed out, these were going to be medical offices in this building, that was it. And now you're coming back to us and asking for apartments because you don't have enough offices to support.
Correct.
So I don't think the business plan was probably as well thought out, and it should have been dollars and cents, knowing what you had. Okay? That's my...
Well, I believe on the first one, you were going to also put a small restaurant type in the first floor too.
Yeah, it's more like a meal prep, part of the wellness.
Right.
Yeah.
But because of everything that's going on, is that affecting?
Right now, everything is pretty much not even functioning.
And what about the gym?
What do you mean? Like,
You said you were to try to open up a gym then back then too, so you'd have members coming to the gym.
yeah, when we are allowed to open, we are moving Maximum Fitness from Waterloo into Seneca Falls. I mean, of course, it will no longer become Maximum.
So you still have plans to
Yeah, we-
sell gym memberships?
Yeah, we have gym membership, we have a shop in there, we have martial art in there, we, few community members lease some of the rooms there. My chiropractic office is going to be in there. We're going to have a medical spa downstairs, part of the whole wellness, then downstairs. So everything is taken over except these 5 classrooms.
So actually, Dr. Cabrera, if I'm hearing correctly, then the memberships for the gym haven't taken place yet.
I have not.
So that's income also that could contribute towards this.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Because we
So
still
I would like to see that
work
also
on the gym.
take place, but if we could get, the rents for the apartments and these gym memberships you're talking about, and, put that in the statement of hardship.
Plus, with my gym being the only gym in the county, we offer a lot of free services to the community members, those who cannot afford gym membership. So we have also taken that into consideration, because not everybody can afford it, and we offer different programs. So part of the business model for this building, to be able to have enough stream of income, so we can keep doing that, we don't want to stop doing that because it's part of what we do. But you can't always control gym membership, you know. You could have 2,000 people, you could have 500, you don't know. Don't want to have a tough time, you don't want to kick them out.
All right. If nobody has anything more to add, then I would like to open up have a motion to open the public hearing part of this. Do I have a motion
Move
for
to
that,
open the
Tom?
public hearing.
Second.
Nikki?
I believe someone is going to try to get in on the computer.
Right. And so we have a second on that
Okay.
by Susan, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and callers, this is Dan Emo, the moderator. And whoever is not in on the call, if you could please mute your phone or your computer, other than the person who's going to speak. Melissa? Sure. All right, so I have to go over and... Okay, I just said. Okay. Callers, this is Dan Emo, the moderator, Zoning Board of Appeals. And if there's anybody out there that'd like to speak, please try to keep the background noise to a minimum. Who's ever on right now, if you can keep your phones muted and your computers also. And we'd like comments on 81 Bayard Street, 81 West Bayard Street, the use variance. Is there anybody out there that would like to comment? No one else?
It's all running. Maybe they didn't hear you?
Are we there for the
Hey,
project?
Dan?
I have a message on here that says there's no audio. People dialed in have no audio on there.
There's no
Oh,
audio on it?
The
Yeah.
audio is on in WebEx and,
Okay, just throwing it out there.
yeah, no, just so we're all on the same page.
No audio?
Dan, you might want to just repeat it again, so that.
Okay, do it again. Public hearing for the Zoning Board of Appeals is taking place for 81 Bayard Street for a use and variance at this property. If there are any callers that would like to comment on this application, please keep the background noise to a minimum. And those of you that are on listening, please keep your phone, your computers and as such muted so everybody can hear. Do I have anybody out there that would like to comment?
Hi, this is Sheila Collins. Are you going to address the Huntington building project after that?
Yes, I am. Correct.
Okay, thank you. I would like to speak for that.
Okay, all right. Is there anyone out there for 81 West Bayard Street? I guess not. Then I'd like to motion to close the public hearing then.
So move.
Tom, second. Susan, all in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but yes, we appoint ourselves lead agency for this project. Do I have a motion to do that?
I'll move.
Mary, second.
That's okay.
Joe seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll go through the secret form. I assume you all have in front of you. This is the short environmental assessment form. Thank you. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? No or moderate to large? Joe, can I start with you?
No.
No?
No.
No for Tom?
No.
Mary?
No.
No.
I'm going with a no.
Susan?
No.
No. Myself, no. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? Joe?
Small.
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 Mary?
Small.
And Susan?
Small.
Let's see, small. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Joe?
No.
Tom?
Small.
Mary?
No.
Susan?
No.
Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? Joe?
No.
Tom?
No.
Mary?
No.
And Susan? Number 5, will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? Joe?
Small.
Tom?
Small.
Mary?
Small.
Susan?
Very small.
Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Joe?
Small.
Tom? You said
Small.
Mary?
Small.
Small.
Number 7, will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies? Or, make this in one, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? Joe, as to water supply?
Small.
And as to wastewater?
Small.
Tom?
No. No.
Mary?
No. No.
And Susan?
I would think it would be no.
No. Number 8, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? Joe?
No.
Tom?
No.
Mary?
No.
Susan?
No.
Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora and fauna? Joe?
No.
Tom?
No.
Mary?
No.
And Susan?
No.
Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? Joe?
No.
Tom?
No.
Mary?
No.
And Susan?
No.
Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? Joe?
No.
Tom?
No.
Mary?
No.
And Susan?
No.
Okay, and that would be a negative declaration. And I guess we have a motion then?
Yeah, I was going to say that negative declaration should be the subject of a formal vote by the board.
So we would have
Not
to,
just your discussion of the factors, but there should be a formal vote that, that something to the effect of, should this happen to appear in the minutes, something to the effect of having reviewed the 11 factors and this board not finding any moderate to large impacts that may occur as a result of this project, this board finds that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts. So if somebody were to make that motion, you would put that to a vote.
I would be willing to make that motion as paraphrase of Pat's.
all right. If I understand that. Anybody second that?
Can I ask a question first?
Usually you second.
All right, okay, I'll second it, and
Okay.
then I'll ask the question.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then, is it, motion, I guess,
Did you have a question?
My question is,
for final approval?
under the description, because on here it's printed as classrooms into 8 apartments, and where do we put 5 classrooms into 5 apartments? That's
Okay,
what my
so
question is.
your options, so did you take a vote on the seeker? Did that happen? Okay, that's been recorded. So your options with the project are, and your options with every project are denial, approval, or approval with conditions. So if you're going to approve it with a condition,
Mhm.
that would be the appropriate place to
Okay,
put the requirement that that there be, I guess, no more than 5 units on the second floor. It would be restricted to the second floor, and that there be no more than five units. Or if you want to word it that each existing classroom would, not hold more than 1 unit. Something like that. You know.
do I make a motion on that, or how, this is?
Yeah, whatever you think is appropriate.
Yeah, because I think 1 apartment per classroom and a total of no more than 5 would be the condition.
So you're making a motion to approve the use variance with that condition?
Subject to that condition.
Okay. Do we have a
You have a second?
second
I
here?
I would recommend that it be no more than 5, or with each existing classroom housing no more than 1 residential unit. Somebody might want 2.
Yeah.
Somebody might, I'm just saying, you might not want to limit the applicant. There could be somebody out there who wants to rent 2 classrooms. And to do that, I don't know. But it seems that the concern that you talked about was making them too small, not making them too large.
Right.
Right.
So I would think you would want to word it
That would be
to make
limited
it.
to no more than 5 units.
So, yeah, something like that, yes.
All right, so the motion has been made by Mary,
And it was second.
seconded by Susan. Vote Joe.
Yay.
Tom,
No.
you made the motion, so I
Yay.
understand, you seconded. I'm a nay. So that would be, a motion is not the approval, it's, the action is not approved.
3 to 2 doesn't.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Ask for discussion. Did I hear the nay here? Nay on approval?
No, I
No.
am a yay.
Yeah.
Joe is a yes.
Yeah,
Joe is yes.
Joe was a yes,
Mary's a
Mary
yes.
was a yes, Susan was a yes.
So we had a yes and a
Yeah.
yes. Okay, I did, I'm not hearing. Okay, so the motion is passed then. Do we have a, I should ask, do we have any discussion on it then?
Well, it's
No, we've
late.
already done all of that.
Right.
Okay.
Discussion.
All right,
Yeah.
so area variance has been approved. I mean, the use variance has been approved. Then I've got area variance down here. Okay, and that would be 3 to 2, am I correct on that?
Correct.
All right. 3 to 2 for approval.
Yes.
Sorry, folks, between these hearing aids and these masks, I am not hearing. Okay. You've got that, Melissa?
Yes.
Okay. Friday, sure, all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Can I ask a question before I leave?
Sure.
Just to make sure I understand what the conditions are. So what you're saying is, with the 5 classrooms, I can put 4 rooms in there for 1 final. Is that what you're saying?
You get 5 classrooms, you can put up to 5 apartments. There's 5 rooms,
Hmm.
you have the option of 5 apartments. You could do less, but not more.
So each classroom, that is 1,300 square foot.
Yeah,
But what I'm saying, let's say I want to put 2 or 3 bedrooms in there for one family. Am I?
Yeah, we don't really, we haven't taken a vote on the style of the apartment.
Okay. Okay.
So, as Mr. Morel was saying, you might have a client that wants a big open space and doesn't need a lot of rooms. Somebody else might want 3 bedrooms.
Good.
You know, it depends on how, if you figure it out before you build it or after.
Okay, so that I can do.
That is not what we're worried about.
That's the coldest.
Yeah,
You just worry about having 2 different families in there.
yeah, you got one.
Just one family.
One per each of those.
Okay, one family per
spaces.
each unit.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 rooms in there if it fits.
So the minimum requirement is a minimum of 1,300 square foot per apartment. That's the size of one classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could be a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, or a 1-bedroom,
Yeah,
as long as it's 1,300 square feet.
right.
So you can't make one 700 and then one bigger.
No, they're not dividing those, he's not
Exactly.
dividing those rooms
I just want to make that clear.
into different apartments.
Okay.
So ultimately, there shouldn't be more than 5 kitchens on the 2nd floor there.
Makes
Right,
sense.
okay? That's really how we look at it.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, good luck with it.
Thank you all. Now we have a continuation of the public hearing relative to the application of the Huntington Apartments, Brewery and Use Variance for the property located at 201 Fall Street. And I think you received in your packets, more information about parking and what have you. And
Sure where to put it.
within that package, just to go over quickly while we're setting up here, they updated site plans to 63 Perkins.
Someone's speaking there on the computer. Someone's speaking on the computer. From the public.
Address them just asking to me.
Okay, open the public hearing for 201 Wall Street. Is there anyone on the line from the public who would like to speak on the Huntington project?
Yes, I'm Steve Gleason. I live at 11 Carroll Avenue.
Tim?
Am I coming through to the public hearing?
Yes, you are, Stephen, you're fine. Is there anybody here?
I live at 11 Carroll Avenue. And the Huntington building, being a historic building, everyone wants it to be renovated and look nice, and I agree with that also. I don't feel this is the project for that. They're trying to put 55 apartments in a corner lot by adding a floor and a roof, and some of those apartments are 450 square feet, which, hotel rooms are larger than that. We have a couple different economic and class of people who are going to move in. And half of them, 28 of them, is you have to be homeless and a disabled veteran. And then the other half, you can be a working family. It's a low-income project, funded, and one or the other possibly, in 28 apartments, may work in that building, but 55 apartments on a crowded corner lot, where I was hit by a truck 3 years ago, by a 18-wheeler running a red light. There's congestion all over. There was a 10-year-old kid 28 years ago who got killed on that corner, walking into the Nice and Easy. from Peter Cox's car lot. And I feel that it's really more trouble than it's worth to renovate a historic structure. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason, we appreciate it. Melissa.
This is Sheila Collins. I own the property at 196 Fall Street. It's a two-family. I live on the first floor. I have a tenant upstairs. And is it okay for me to proceed?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Sheila.
Okay. I appreciate the previous gentleman's opinion. My opinion is a little different. And I'm certainly delighted that the gas station proposition did not go through. But in my opinion, the value of my property is going to be greater if the Huntington building is developed. Having a derelict building sitting basically across the street from my property is not a good thing. My background is living in Springfield, Missouri, and there was a lot of development there, public-private partnership, and my experience is a little bit different projects than this. However, this is the project that seems to have presented itself, and I'm not convinced that if this is not approved, that there will be any other group that will step forward. My understanding is that this group has multiple properties in upstate New York, and they do have experience with getting the proper funding. I would just like to see the building be improved and productive. I do understand the concerns about smaller living spaces, but that's not all that uncommon these days, especially with studios or one bedrooms. So I guess I would put my vote to progressing and letting this property be developed. As I stand here looking out my window and looking at all the broken windows over there, I think that it would be good for us, good for the town, for this to move forward. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila, we appreciate it. Is there any other callers on the line for the Huntington building?
Yeah, my name is Tim Garrity. I live on Pleasant Street. My concern would be that's already one of the worst intersections we have in the area. If you're trying to get from Rumsey Street to Barrett Street, behind somebody making a left-hand turn or coming the opposite direction, either north or south on Rumsey Street, trying to make a left-hand turn. And since the ingress and egress to this building, as I understand, is going to be off of the Rumsey Street Bridge, you're looking at 55 apartments, figure 40 of them have vehicles. That's going to be a nightmare both for the vehicular traffic and for the pedestrian traffic, because there is no signed crosswalk either across Fall Street or Rumsey Street at that location. So I don't know if DOT's been had any input into putting a 55 apartment unit at that intersection and what would need to be done to the intersection. That's my major concern. I mean, aside from if, say, you have 10 tenants with kids in there, are the kids going to play in the two streets on the major intersection or on the banks of the canal? Or just wander in the gas station parking lot? I think it's a bad place to put this without some other considerations. That's all.
Thank you very much, Tim. We appreciate your input. Are there any other callers on the line for the Huntington project at 201 Fall Street? Melissa, I've got 5 calls on here. I've only had 3 answers. Joy.
If they don't respond, they may just be listening.
Okay. Again, is there anyone on the line for the project 201 Fall Street, the Huntington project? I guess not. Okay, with the phone calls, I guess that's the last of it. And I have to follow up on the public portion of this. 2 letters to read, or a couple letters to read. The first one is from Emil Bovey, Seneca Falls. To us, I don't know whether my board has received this or not. It's the application for the variance, of course. And enclosed are his, my detailed comments submitted in support of the above application at this public hearing. Of course, he's not participating. He does have one reservation. I strongly support approval of the $16 million home leasing proposal to renovate the Huntington building, a site for supported residential services for disabled veterans and supportive housing. The project aligns with the goals of preservation of historic structures and caring for those who served our country and are in need of affordable housing. Home leasing has tens of thousands of all kinds of rental units in several states and a commitment to its tenants in their communities. Eagle Star is already providing the kind of services proposed for 201 Fall Street. My understanding is that the configuration and demographics of the proposed structure are dictated by a need to generate a reasonable rate of return. Is there someone on the phone? He goes on to say these men and women served our country and deserve the opportunity this project provides. Many different types of disabled folks reside in our community in different settings, and we are better off for it. The only reservation is that the applicant should maintain 24/7 presence in the building. Let me say he goes on, this is a little detailed, but I've been asked to read it. Following information concerns the $16 million home leasing proposal. With online research and discussions with Adam Driscoll, Zach Fuller, and community members. I'm not associated with home leasing or any of the programs being located in the Huntington building. My goal is town approval of the project with the applicant required to provide 24/7 presence in the building. Home leasing is the kind of developer we want in our community. Family-owned business with tens of thousands of different kinds of rental units in several states. The homepage of home leasing states it believes the housing is a fundamental human right. It is well known for its green practices and commitment to the residents and communities. A visit to the site would be appropriate. He goes on to say that there will be, well, we already know, 17 studio apartments, 35 one and 2 bedroom apartments. According to home leasing, it's an out-of-pocket construction cost, and it was reduced using tax credits and other sources of construction funding to reach an acceptable rate of return on its investment. These sources include historic tax credits, credits associated with New York State programs to be located in the building, and a DRI award. It is doubtful a reasonable rate of return on investment could be reached on this project if the entire cost of construction was paid for from private sources. Home leasing in Eagle Star, the agency overseeing the Veterans Program will have management and staff offices in the building, although there will not be 24/7 presence. The 2 state-funded programs are the Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative Program for disabled veterans and the New York State Office of Homes and Community Renewal. These state programs will provide tax credits for the construction costs of updating the building and funding ongoing programs. The ongoing ESSHI funds in Eagle Star will operate its supporting program for disabled veterans. And they are partnering on this project. Eagle Star, according to Zach Fuller, is experienced in providing services to veterans. Case management, transportation, and other services would be provided to the veterans resided in the building, funded by a state-owned program. Veterans from Seneca, Wade, Yates, and Ontario. The remaining apartments occupied by working persons participating in a state initiative under the New York State Office of Homes and Community Renewal. The goal is to provide housing to these wage owners whose ability to pay rent is limited. The state would subsidize the rent. Adam Driscoll of Home Leasing assured me the building was not being certified as a Section 8 property. We should be pleased that Home Leasing and Eagle Star are willing to go forward with this project, preserving an historic building and providing needed services. They have expended a great deal of time and money in putting the project together with impressive professionalism and commitment to tenants and community, reassuring us. However, the ZBA should require that a 24/7 presence be maintained in the building. And that is the end of that correspondence. Can I ask you, this might be where we received letters from Christopher Little, or I'm sorry, I might be mispronouncing Lytle.
Yeah.
I apologize. Or from Sharon Reno, or Menzel Case. Have any of you,
Yeah.
I read it.
you have received it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
on all of them, okay.
Sure, do you have
I
that?
did,
Uh,
yeah, not the one from.
Melissa, did they require, or request we read these?
I didn't get those.
Any of them?
No, I didn't get the one from Menzel Case or from the other, I got Christopher Lytle and I got Emil Bovee.
You get Karen,
No,
Beals,
no,
Huntington Beals?
no.
This is addressed, I've got all these, one addressed to myself, and the one from Miss Reno was the Lieutenant Colonel of our, I'm sorry, of the veterans downtown,
The American Legion.
American Legion. Thank you, Susan. Yes, she's the commander of the American Legion post. I can read these if you would.
I didn't get.
You didn't see it?
No.
Okay. Mary, this is addressed to all of us. So if everyone else has seen this, I'll just pass it over to Mary, so she sees this. Has anybody received Habitat for Humanity from Enzo Case?
No,
You have?
no,
Mary hasn't.
no.
I have.
Okay, you have not. All right. And from Mr. Lytle, have
I
you
have.
received correspondence?
I have that one.
Okay.
And you said there was one from Karen Beals?
And Melissa, as far as you know, then these have
I got
not
some.
requested.
I didn't.
The clerk's office did not receive copies.
She said the
of
Huntington
case
family
letter or,
supports.
commander's letter.
Okay. I have only received a request from Mr. Bovee.
Might be easier to just summarize if they're in favor or not in favor.
I'm sorry, Joe. For what I have here, they're all in favor. Endorsement of home leasing from Mr. Lytle. Endorsement from Ms. Reno. And of course, endorsement from Emil. Seems like there was one more I had here.
Menzo Case.
Mental case.
Yeah.
That way it goes in the minutes that
Yes. Thank you, Joe.
And I don't know if anybody else got from Karen Beals, Karen Huntington Beals.
Yeah.
She was speaking sort of for her family,
Go ahead.
the Huntingtons.
Yeah.
In favor, actually.
Right,
Yeah.
right. There was
And
a,
they came around to it.
yeah, and I don't.
They didn't believe it was
recall, but
possible. but-
The Huntington
No, they
family did
Yeah.
come out in support
Yeah.
of the project also. I had received that correspondence, yes. Yes. Excuse me.
So Caitlin, I thought Caitlin Meads had sent.
That also,
And-
yes.
Okay,
We must
and
have
Aaron
that.
Tobin from?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so are these all letters that have been received by the clerk here so that they can be made
Put it
part
in.
of the record of
Sure,
this
of
proceeding?
course.
I
So-
didn't get those either.
You didn't get,
No.
okay. Lisa, what do I do?
It looks like you get some of them.
This is where
I got two. I got Linus and I got Amy.
I was looking at
That's all I
the
got.
email line.
They had my email incorrect somewhere, so I didn't get some.
Yeah, Caitlin was with me.
Mary has the other one.
Caitlin was with me.
For the record. I don't want to hold on to them because I don't know where they end up.
Thank you.
Are there any you don't have?
No, I can discuss that, yeah. Because I didn't print it all out, but usually we have just so we can confirm it all.
Just one last shout out to everybody that's on the line about the Huntington project at 201 Fall Street. I'm about to close the public hearing. Anyone out there like to speak? And Susan, could I have that letter to Melissa? Thank you.
Thank you.
So with the public hearing, do I have a motion to close the public hearing? So moved. Joe moves.
Second?
Tom seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Uh, Excuse me, we went through the, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong in my notes, but we've gone through the secret forms.
Yes, that was completed.
Everything is complete.
But you did,
And
I don't think you issued a determination.
No, we didn't.
We tabled it and continued the public hearing, right?
You continued the public hearing, but I had that negative declaration was completed. If not, I did, I did type up the findings taken from that meeting.
I have in my notes as a negative declaration.
Yeah, right.
I was late, sorry.
That's fine. Well, I'm saying.
It was really late.
I was late, sorry.
So I took what was said at the meeting and have it in written format. I was going to ask you to sign it, but, after the meeting, but it may be a good idea to, right now, go through what it says and what I've written, and have you adopt the written findings this evening as a part of this, just to reaffirm what was done at the last meeting. Would you like me to do that?
To go through the secret.
Oh, basically, I'll read what I have prepared.
So it's that form that's in our packet, our second packet here, right?
Well, right, but it's, what I've written is
what we-
basically paraphrasing your discussion,
Right.
what your points were, which couldn't be done at the meeting, but
Okay.
now it's here. Can we hand that over to Dan? Sure. Thank you. So then that's the copy. Sorry, I only got 2 copies of it, but I went through the 11 factors, and in those 11 factors, we found moderate impacts with number 2, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of land? And then number 5, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or a walkway? All the other factors were noted as no or small impact. So then, turning the page to part 3, in part 3 is the part where any of the check marks under the moderate to large impacts need to be addressed. And this is what I took from our conversation of how the board wanted to address that. So for number 2, moderate impact due to change of use and in the intensity of use of land. The project will necessarily involve a change in the use and intensity of use of land, as it would go from a car dealership to multifamily housing. The car dealership use was intense in that it involved the delivery of vehicles, employees, vehicles coming and going for repairs, vehicle shoppers, etc. While residential use is usually associated with a less intense use of land, this is noted as a moderate impact, as the residential use proposed by the project would represent a change in the use and in the intensity of use, and would not be limited to normal business hours. Further, the intensity of use is mitigated by the project following the requirements of the Seneca Falls zoning code relating to open space for multifamily conversions. Then number 5, moderate impact due to adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect the existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway. The moderate impact from having residential units in place of the commercial use formerly at this location would be mitigated by the applicant's association with Eagle Star Housing and the Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative, which would provide transportation services to the 28 units devoted to homeless veterans. Traffic would be further mitigated by the project location along a public transportation route. So if that captures what the discussion was at the prior meeting, that was the mitigation noted for the 2 moderate impacts. And if you want to adopt this as written, a motion to that effect would be appropriate.
I would make that motion
I'll
to
second.
adopt it as written.
Susan makes the motion, Joe has seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
So Dan, since it's right in front of you, why don't you go ahead and sign that? We can include that in with the record for the proceeding.
I have this reversed hat. I guess it'll make a difference. I can submit this to Lisa, to Melissa,
Yes.
or Lisa, how we want to call. Okay, and then I have a, is there a discussion or presentation going on here? How should we proceed with this?
Well,
Presentation first.
You received a packet with some
If you all read
to
the packet,
address your
if you
concerns
see-
that were raised, so you might want to talk to the applicant first.
And as I started before, the parking variance has been changed to provide 63 parking spaces. I believe it was 59 previous to this.
51.
Correct. This also addresses the,
51 to 63, so 12 more spaces.
I'm sorry,
51 to 63, so 12 more spaces. Sorry. Okay. Math and stuff.
and taking into account the maximum building height and the recreational space, which I see has been reduced from 22,000 to 16,580 square feet.
Square feet of what?
If you ever read this on the second page, Susan.
Well,
Can I go, can I? maybe
Yes,
just
go on,
go through?
ahead. Here,
So
it's
right
required.
here.
We have provided 16,580, but they're counting 540 square feet for recreation space.
Or not. It might be easier to hear his presentation first.
So you want to, I'm sorry, Susan, I can provide you with that.
Well, I have it.
Do you have
I
it?
just wanted to know what they had to say about the changes.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so my name is Luke Sweetrock with BME. With me is Adam Driscoll and Sarah from Home Leasing, and we have a representative from the Eagle Star as well, so we can answer any questions that the board has. So based on our last meeting, we provided you some additional information back. We provided the structurability, the structural letters that you were looking for, structural design plans that we sent along to you. For that, we also did revise the long form EAF because we had received comments from you regarding that. So I don't know if we want to, it's fairly consistent with the secret review you did before. So I don't think it's very different other than we changed the parking basically because this was the original. So what we did is I'll just go through, give you an overview, and then I can get into the specifics. But for the special use permit, I sort of broke down and gave you the ranges of square footages, and that basically the 17 studios square footages, the 35 one-bedroom studios, and then the 3 two-bedroom studios. I give you the square footage ranges that we're proposing. We confirmed that those ranges are all within the ranges that we're required to do for the DHCR funding and for our funding sources. So those are all, these square footages are mandated by the state for what we're proposing to do here. So we did review that, and then we looked at the regulatory agreement, because I know we talked about that before, for how the length of time. So this regulatory agreement is 50 years, so they'll be maintaining it for 50 years, because there was concern about what happens if a change of use or all that with the special use permit. So we provided some of that information under that special use permit. We also, based on our request for the area variance and the parking, we wanted to see if we could get some additional parking to reduce the amount of the request for the variance. So the original layout was here, and it had the gazebo there, and there was a green space up in here, and then the gazebo was there. So we basically moved the handicap parking up front here into this area, which is closer to the main entrance to the building. And we pushed the parking out, removed the gazebo, and added parking here. So we basically went from 51 spaces to 63 spaces, or about a little over 1.1 space per unit. So that provides some additional parking, and trying to try to get some more parking for that variance. Once again, we provided some more information on the sort of the parking that the Eagle Star uses. What they see typically is about 25% of there'll be 28 units, and about 25% of the people that are in those units have a car. So, and about from the workforce housing, there's about 60% of those people that have cars. So the original number, we were still comfortable that with the 51 we were originally proposing, but we do understand that codes requires more, so we increased the parking count, which will provide additional parking for the tenants and employees. We've also want to note in there that we added that there's daily transportation for the veterans as well. So there's daily buses coming and can pick them up and take them as well. So that was sort of a couple of the things. Then I just put some additional information on the building height. Obviously the big reason for the building height is the Mansard roof but it's already the 3 units the 3 stories that are there now are already more than what's allowed per code, but we are, bringing it back to the original look of the building.
I do have a question about that.
Sure.
So on this set of pictures, the picture that looks like it's coming from the gas station, right, there's this.
Oh, yeah.
You're right, you got this part and you got the 3 stories.
Yeah.
And you got that little bit sticking up right there.
Yeah, I think that's probably,
That was the freight
that was the elevator shaft, yeah.
Okay, but there's already something above the 3
There was
stories.
already, I think it's, yeah.
Oh, well, the picture's right there, I'm sorry, I'm looking at.
Well, I've got sort of I've got the old historic. So, I mean, it was there originally too, the Mansard, and then, yeah, obviously that's the one.
There's a portion of it that's there right now.
Yeah,
Is my point that I want the board to understand that.
Yeah, there's a portion of the elevator shaft that extends
It's
up
in the floor.
to the original floor that was there.
Right, so it's in effect taking that and just setting it up.
It's going back to, trying to go back to what was there previously, and we're sort of matching what was already there.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And then you had mentioned, you were talking about the recreational space a little bit. So basically when we added the parking and we added things, we were really close to meeting the 22,000, but when we added the 12 spaces, that took away some of the green space. But we're still providing about 16,580 square feet on the site with the gardens. The playground area and the viewing area, along with some of the other areas around here. And we're also, we're within 470 feet of the Seneca Falls Recreation Park. So we feel like with the combination of the two that we're meeting that requirement of proximity to the rec and we're trying to provide as much square footage on the property, but we're also trying to, balance parking additional parking that we're looking to do as well. So that was some of the information that we took away from the last meeting and wanted to try to provide to you and to get to you to help with your decision. I think, go ahead.
Sorry, I've got another question that I think the board might be interested in light of some of the comments this evening. In relation to traffic, you've got what I'll call a traffic loop at the entrance, right? Okay, so coming off the bridge, there's 2 ways to get into that parking lot.
Correct.
Right? Would traffic be going in on both of those, or is one in and one out, or how do you foresee this working?
We made it wide enough so that cars can go either way.
Okay.
I anticipate that, depending on if you're dropping off at the front door, you're probably going to go to that second and drop off at that.
Or if you're going to the parking lot,
you're probably
in the back.
You're probably going to this back one and not go through there to get to the back. I would think you'd go further away from the intersection.
Yeah.
To go into that parking lot, so it's more of a direct which is sort of the intent, but we didn't want to stop this from being two-way traffic, because if someone wants to pull in and drop off at the front entrance, they would be able to do that.
What is the distance from that original driveway to the intersection?
The original,
Well, the driveway that you're planning there to the intersection. And does it, DOT have a regulation about that distance? Are you within that regulation? I'm not, top of my head, remember what it is, but to have an entrance to a business
well,
has to be a certain distance from an intersection.
correct. Well, I mean, we tried to maximize it here, but right now, the whole thing is a curb cut from here to here, so we're closing off and just providing two curb cuts, because right now, you could pretty much go in from
Right.
here to.
But by putting one to the furthest northern part there, there's a regulation from that entrance to the intersections, they're not. And we,
Not for, and there may be for, but this is a residential, it's not a major intersection, so they have more of them, they're lined up for how much traffic you have normally, and it's normally about 150 feet, but they also, you're also, driveways across the way and things. I mean, we're also trying to maximize it, but we're also trying to make this our main access, which is definitely further away from the intersection, so.
Do you know where where those intersections sit in relation to the Nice and Easy that's across on the other side of the street? So does you got it on that one?
Yeah, you can
Theirs is open.
So theirs is open from here to here. So, we're further down from where theirs is.
So the south one really clears there.
The south one is past
Just past their building.
Yeah. And I mean, we tried to push this as far down, and then this is actually the state's land that goes down to the bridge.
Right.
But we also got to try to get people to this. This is where we're making our main entrance and all of our accessibility to get people to the elevator to get them up and down. So this is why we're building that addition, so that you can get people can come in there and they have accessibility.
And what about the buses? How do you see the buses using this?
That's pretty much the reason for that, I would think, is that they can pull right up and pick up there, and you still have room for people to get around them.
For buses for Eagle Star?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a passenger van.
It's just a passenger van.
Yeah, okay.
But I envision they could pull right up to the front door.
Right.
Have people load in. I mean, we gave them enough room where you could still get around the bus when it was loading or unloading.
Okay. Well, there was some concern about that intersection, and as you said, the curb cut for Nice and Easy is the entire length. The curb cut, what's there now, is the entire length, and that kind of leads to chaos.
I think this is going to help, with the pattern, because there's going to be defined entrances, and now there's not.
I think the issues that I would see, only because I've worked for the town village for 30 years as law enforcement, is when people are coming off the 5 and 20, and they're going to either make a right or left onto the Rumsey Street Bridge. Okay, if there's a car waiting to make a left-hand turn into the first driveway, a lot of cars are looking down Rumsey Street, and they make the turn and not realizing there's a car waiting to turn into Peter Koch's car. That's where a lot of the accidents and everything happen.
Especially if you get 3 or 4 cars stacked up for the light.
Right. Now they're out into the
you got
intersection.
somebody heading the opposite direction, waiting for the light to change behind them, so the cars can move out of the way.
So what would be could it be an issue to just make the second entrance entrance and have the first one as an exit, so that way there's no cars piling up, it gives them a longer distance?
Yeah. I mean, this could
Just a
just,
thought, I mean,
this could just be an exit only.
Yep.
And
That way
then
they
it's
just
do
come
not
down.
enter, and then everybody could enter
Right.
further down.
And then I'm thinking the folks that are gonna be picked up and dropped, that loop would then basically be a bus loop or van loop. You're picking up and dropping off, and then off you go.
And then they're just heading
Whichever.
right out of there and heading to 5 and 20 or.
Exactly.
They're going
And if they're
down.
waiting for the light, they're waiting for the light,
Yeah.
on the loop as opposed to on Rumsey Street, on Veterans Bridge. And it might be more, if nothing else, more predictable for your drivers and for the residents of, okay, we're going in over here, and then for the buses, they peel off, they do the loop, and then I think essentially they would be the only ones using the loop by and large, as opposed to having residents, come on, let me get through the loop and into the, so. I think this might be a reasonable condition for the board to impose.
I couldn't see the drawing. Is the exit then going to be the north?
So this would be,
That would be
an exit only. So anybody that's coming down this way would come in here and either drop off or park. And then anybody who's in that parking lot would probably exit here. And so you would be minimizing basically movement closer to that intersection.
So you would be two-way on the second exit and one-way on
This is
the one
two-way.
closest to the intersection.
Right, this is two-way in and out, and this would just be exit only.
Yeah. Would we be able to pick up any green space in the process of that concept?
We could probably pick up a little green space.
Because I'm already missing the gazebo. Not that you could put it there, but.
Yeah, I mean, we can, I mean, this is 24-foot wide, so I would probably narrow that so people did try to come in.
Yeah.
So I'd probably, bump that green out a little bit more. And we still have the sign here, and we still have the flag, and we try to keep that green. I mean, right now it's all pavement, so you're still gonna have a green, you're still gonna have a lawn area out front, a presence there for the front. We still got the gardens and the playground.
Yeah,
and the
fundamentally, I
scenic
prefer the
area, so-
51 parking places and the more grass, but.
I don't see where the 63, I counted 60, and I can't seem to find where you're.
Did you count the ones up front here?
Yeah, but I counted on this drawing, it looks like you have van accessible spaces, and you're counting them as 2 spaces instead of 1 on this drawing here.
Yeah.
Because you have them in the.
You got 63, there's
One added.
There's
over by the
12,
garbage
9, 15,
Receptacle.
there's 20.
Say,
Yeah, well, I hope we can count, right? $63. I got it again, so I'm hoping that's right.
And maybe I'm not reading the drawing correctly?
There's 15 here, there's 9, 18 in the middle, 12 along here, 5 here, and 4 there.
What is this? What is this right here? Is that 2 spaces? It looks to me like you have it marked off and separated.
That's just legal for the dimensions, those are all parking spaces.
Okay. It just did.
See, this is just
didn't
this just shows,
specify.
this says 9-foot typical and 18-foot typical, it's just labeling the typical dimensions of the spaces.
Okay.
actually had a question about, first of all, according to our code, the traffic access question, and I'm reading here, not located too near street corners and all. It's a problem I had with the project being there. But the other thing is the circulation and parking on the interior. With the way the parking spaces are set up, would you be able to, with a emergency vehicle, fire truck, whatever, be able to get in there? Would it be wide enough for, adequate, not only for the required spaces, but easily accessible?
Well, we've sized we've sized these, wide, but I think, if anything, you'd be able to, with the size of the building, you'd probably be serving a fire from either Rumsey or 520. I don't know that you'd be going in there probably because you're going to be accessing a hydrant on 520. And I don't even think there's hydrants on Rumsey. So they'll have to, for a fire that way. But the emergency for an ambulance, we sized it for the van and everything. So this is going to accommodate all that. And then for the big ladder truck, if they have to get to the 4th floor, they're probably going to have to, they'll be on 520 probably to hook up to the hydrant. And I did provide that correspondence with the fire marshal that we reached out to him to discuss that coverage on the building and things.
Dean, that would be something that the county would address to as far as the parking spaces.
I believe so. I'd probably be going to need the
25 feet in the back of the building.
Right.
And
Right.
obviously we know the parking in front.
But they try not to block the fire trucks in for possible collapse of the building and stuff, so.
Okay. I'd like to jump on the gun. Do any of my board members have questions beyond what they've spoken on?
Actually, does the county address all of the stairways and exits in case of a fire? Are there any required because of the height of the building and the number of people?
Yes, there are fire requirements.
Where you have to have like exterior fire escapes and things like that?
Yep, all that's fit into the fire code inspections.
Okay.
Sprinkler systems, everything.
And also about, since there are a lot of handicap units, addressing how to get the handicapped people out of this
Most likely they'll have a
size.
list of what apartments are handicapped, and that would be the first ones they would go to. To assist.
Just real quick, I'm Sarah, I oversee property management for home leasing. This is a huge question, and we'll do fire drills with the fire department at least twice a year as well, which I think the residents find really helpful.
Okay.
Dan, I have a statement I'd like to read.
Of course, Joe, please.
I'm going to have to read it off my iPad. The purpose of the unpaid and all volunteer zoning board is to interpret and enforce the rules and regulations of Chapter 300 zoning of the town of Seneca Falls, not only for the present time, but for the future. There are applications presented that require alterations of the zoning regulations, and if granted, should be the minimum relief of said laws. Let me ensure all that are concerned that this board is in favor of the development of this site, but is concerned that it may not always be used as planned and may in the future require additional parking for tenants, as well as other issues regarding the density and the size of the units. I go on to address a parking thing, but I'll say it, but it might not be applicable. Regarding the parking situation, now I'm looking at a used car. Excuse me. Regarding the parking situation, I personally would rather see a variance issued for less open space to allow for additional parking. The possibility of moving the playground and the viewing platform behind the raised bed garden area and then open the far southeast corner of the current planned parking lot area, therefore creating additional parking space. I know that board members don't want to lose any more green, but that corner down there,
Wait, here,
exactly.
wait, I can't because that's right down to the canal.
That's the slope.
So then we can't gain any more parking than we have.
No, we've maximized,
Well, from tonight or from when we spoke?
No,
I mean, we
we have
had,
63 now.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the other option then, if we can't gain more parking, is to eliminate more units. And you said you couldn't do that before. But you somehow added 5 units from the original. You went from 50 to 55. Why can't we go back to 50?
Because when we had originally submitted our application, I believe it was in February, and we were still working through the finance model, and it wouldn't work at 50, so we were planning on submitting additional information with the additional units so that we could make this financially viable.
So you're basically saying there's no way to increase the size of the apartments either, which is another concern that we have.
That's a huge,
That was the
huge
biggest
concern.
concern that some of us
Huge
had.
concern.
So if you increase the size, you're going to decrease the number, therefore you don't financially work.
Right.
You can't charge more for the larger apartments?
We have, we have strict regulations from New York State about size of apartments as well as what we can charge. And there's, Sarah, basically no rent increases,
Right.
other than minimum if allowed over time, correct?
Our rent is restricted through the guidelines that we're funded through, excuse me. So every year, even if we do submit a rent increase, we can't increase somebody's rent over 3%, and it all has to be approved. And they come out with, the rent restrictions come out with the income limits through HUD every year.
But someone who rents a 2-bedroom apartment is not going to pay the same as someone who rents an efficiency.
Correct. So the rent limits are set by bedroom size, and the income limits are set by household size. So depending on how many people are in the household, that determines the income limit, whether it's one person or 2 people. But the rent is determined by the bedroom size. So efficiency, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom.
So we've got a playground, but we've got no apartments that actually could house a family in here, other than 2 bedrooms. Because I'm assuming you can't have a family in a 1-bedroom apartment.
You could have 2 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, and you could have 2 people in an efficiency, technically. So you could have a single parent with a child in a 1-bedroom.
So then basically with 55 units, you can have 110 people in this building.
Well, the 2 bedrooms could have 3, but basically, technically, yes. Now, we don't anticipate that, and, 25 of those units are through Eagle Star to the individuals.
Hi, I'm Erin Militello. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Operations for Eagle Star Housing. I have been a licensed clinical social worker for 18 years and have had the privilege of working with veterans for most of my career. I've heard you talk about the size of units and parking for the veterans and families for veterans. Most of the veterans that we serve at Eagle Star Housing are single males. But that being said, oftentimes the veterans that we serve don't want large spaces. So they actually would prefer to be in smaller spaces. So the unit sizes of these apartments are very well sized for the comfort level for the folks that will be going in them.
Yeah, I was understanding that for 50%
Yes.
of the structure, but was really hoping that the other 50% would have more accommodation for a family with 1 or 2 children, or some older retirees that wanted more space than that, but to live in town.
Well, for the 2 bedrooms, the range, and there's 3 of them, not a whole lot, but there's 3 of them. The range is $975 to $1,065.
But Joe's point was, couldn't you possibly cover your expenses by adding a couple more of those to go back to the 50, since they're 975?
We looked at it since we met, and it just isn't financially viable for the project.
I still see these as all too small. I guess my take on this is that the apartments are very, very tiny, and I appreciate you're trying to do something for veterans. I mean, but I think veterans deserve better. It looks like to me, instead of you're not housing them, you're warehousing them. It just doesn't seem an adequate space, just too many units, and the units are just all too small. I mean, we just had a presentation where we had someone that wanted to put smaller apartments in, you know, like 2 apartments of 700 square feet in one classroom, and we changed that approval to the 1,300 square feet that's existing to make it adequate space for someone to live in, and now we've got 464 square feet, which is a little bigger than my living room for an apartment for someone. It just doesn't seem like they're large enough, and there's just way too many people just put in this building that you have to expand to get enough people to make money. It just looked like a disservice to the veterans to me. I mean, Joe can probably speak better about, you know, veterans than I can, but it just looks I'm very uncomfortable with the number and the size.
I'm a veteran, and I agree with what you say about space. Most veterans in my area are more comfortable being confined and not open, but not all. And some of us would rather have open spaces and not confined. And I myself, I wouldn't be able to live in one of those apartments. I couldn't do it. And that's how I feel about the veterans out.
The studios wouldn't only be for veterans, it could be for the workforce housing residents as well, and we do have those in our other properties, but for what it's worth, I'm very passionate about this project, and I just wanted to share something from last night. Frank Ruzicka on the planning board had said right before they had voted to move this forward tonight, he had referenced the 2006 and 2018 comprehensive plan that the project was hitting on several goals, and some of those goals were housing and neighborhood vision. People of all income levels have access to safe, decent, and affordable housing. Goal 22, a diversity of housing types and densities are encouraged in order to assure decent housing for people of all ages and income level. Strategy 2.2 said, create a town, village sponsored entity or partnership to develop affordable housing programs. And then 22.4 had mentioned, allow for a variety of mixed housing types along the canal and in commercial zones.
That last one, that's where I would have preferred this seem more mixed with some larger apartments and some smaller. The 2006 plan, we have done quite a bit of this work in the area. There are, I mean, nothing that would replace this, but there are quite a few of the smaller, efficient, income, comfortable apartments going in over top of some of the businesses in the downtown. Also, some apartment complexes that are pretty much dedicated to affordable housing and so forth. What we don't have are some of the slightly fancier apartments that retired people might want to live in, or working professionals. We are very short that. And I was really hoping that some of these would fit that. So that is my piece of disappointment with it. It's not a complaint about the veterans and that some of the apartments are small. It's that they're all small.
Tom, do you have anything that you want to?
No, I got a couple, maybe Pat, if you could clarify this. Talks about under the conversions, under 36, 360. What are they referring to as density? Are they talking about the density of multiple dwelling units? When this first line says there shall not be a greater density than is normally permitted in the district which the conversion property is located. Are they talking about the individual apartments, or are they talking about buildings that are multiple dwellings within that district?
Yeah, they're talking about buildings that are multiple dwellings in that district. How many units are you fitting onto space? And that, that coincides with the requirement for open space. You know, the number of square feet of open space per unit. Yeah, and which
The planning board
which they need.
considered those things last night, though.
Yes.
correct? What was the planning board decision last night?
They recommended approval with really, you know, they approved the final site plan as submitted with leaving any conditions that this board would impose regarding parking. Because you had yet to issue an area variance with regard to parking.
They had
Yeah,
recommended,
we should end at this point.
Right.
they had also said if the zoning board wanted to land bank and not have as much parking spaces, that's why I think that one of the reasons why they had left it open was because they were,
They didn't want, okay, so there was also the discussion of the possibility of what they call land banking some parking spaces. That is, that they're shown on the plan. There may not be that all of them are needed, you know, despite what our code says, despite what your feelings are about the number of parking spaces, the experience of the applicants, of the other places like this that they run, are that these spots are most likely not going to be used, you know, given the clientele that they have, you know, and the services that they provide. So if this board were of a mind to allow, say, one parking space per unit, so that there's 55, and then that would render 8 spots that could be shown on the plan, but not necessarily paved, and could be open space if you wanted to go that way. That if the board wanted to impose a condition like that, that they wouldn't then have to go back and change the final site plan approval with the planning board. So they were recommending approval of the project as a whole, just leaving flexibility for this board when considering the parking area variance.
But if a parking variance goes with the building, not with the project, is that correct? I mean, once if we were to decide one parking space per unit is adequate, then that would be, it stays with the building forever, no matter what project is in there.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, as long as a multifamily residential project were in there. So if somebody came and says, geez, I want to change this back to, what'd they make there? This was the Huntington building. Who
They
built-
made old-fashioned motor vehicles.
Let's say they want to turn it back into an old-fashioned motor vehicle assembly line.
And it was the East Company.
The parking is now useless because it's a completely different use, and they don't have residential units in there, so it would have to be changed. So, yes, it does stay with the land, as long as the use remains the same.
But if this project ends or doesn't work, and somebody else comes in to buy the building as 55 residential apartments, then they have inadequate parking for what the code has been.
That's what I said in my first statement.
Right.
You have to plan for the future, not just the
Yeah.
present.
And I also, along with that, I mean, you have combined experience on having this type of project, and how's it working out, and where is it, and how's that going?
With Eagle Star? So this would be our second project with Eagle Star. The first one is in Batavia, New York, and we're starting construction in July.
So you finally got the financing through and all
Yep.
that?
Yep.
And all the approvals?
Yep.
So, but you don't have the experience with this population and this type of building so far?
So far, no.
So this is
But
just,
what is your experience?
You do have experience of
I mean,
60% for the
you
workforce.
talked about the workforce
Oh, yes.
type housing and things like that, and you had in your papers, I think 60%, or something like that. Could you?
Yes, for the workforce housing, we have roughly 2,500 units throughout New York State and the surrounding states. But I'll let Sarah.
and Pennsylvania and Maryland also?
Yep. Yep.
New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and we have close to 30 properties that we own and manage, and then we also manage another 15 properties for the Urban League of Rochester. And they're mixed use, they're all different funding programs at every property, but we do work with workforce housing. We do have Section 8 properties, one of them, that's one in Pennsylvania. And while we haven't started a partnership in management with Eagle Star, we do have properties where we have partnerships with programs like Eagle Star that's serving a population. We work with the previously incarcerated, homeless. We're doing a project with the LGBTQ plus community. We are doing projects with developmentally disabled individuals, seniors, frail elder. So we do have a lot of experience working with agencies like Eagle Star in a very successful relationship. And we really find that the integrated housing model is powerful because it's not taking one population and isolating them with only people that are in the same situation or came from the same situation that they were in. It's putting them with individuals that live in the community so that they can really become part of the community and feel like they're, not just labeled as what they are. I know that the square footage is a little, it's small, it feels small and reads small. We try to work really hard with our architect, Mike, who couldn't be here, he was here last night, to create an open space as much as possible within the units so that they feel bigger than they actually are, and I know it's hard to picture. But we have done this before, and it is successful, and I'm trying to think of what else I can say. And as far as, thinking about the idea of market rate housing or larger, more luxury style apartments, we also work hard to even, take a lot of time to pick out the fixtures. And for this historic renovation to, really think about what the building was and bring back that character to it in our design, so that when you walk into one of our communities, it doesn't feel like affordable housing. It feels like market rate housing that people are really proud to live in and to show off their apartments. And we have a mix of all different people who live in our communities, and some of them are people, if they're, first apartment, they're just starting out, maybe they're a single parent or a young couple. Maybe it's a person that's just living and wants to have a simple place to go home. Or, a senior, retired senior who wants to downsize, they just sold their house and wants to move to an apartment. So the size, I know, seems small, but that's what works for the funding that we have. So we are restricted to it. But these sizes are similar to all of the units that we serve. They're all this square footage.
It just seems like a very densely populated building with small units in a small town that doesn't really have, like a city, you can walk to a corner deli, or you can get to a drugstore, or you can, get to parks, you can walk around, you have public transportation, you have a bus coming by every 20 minutes. Our bus schedule is kind of appalling. It's what serves now.
We do have a bus. It might take you all day to get some.
Yes, but you might not be able to get to your job, and if the job training program works, you're going to have a car to get to your job. I mean, it just doesn't, it just seems like there's parts of it that look really, really good. Restoring a historic building is great. Housing veterans is a fabulous idea. It just seems like the wrong project for this particular structure.
I have another question for you guys. I brought it up the first time. How you base the monies that you get is about the amount of income the apartments produce. Am I correct?
Base the rent?
Yeah, how, you say you can't downsize because you can't get the funding. How is that based? On the square footage, on the amount of apartments?
So, other than Eagle Star, they receive a rent assistance. For workforce, there's no, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no subsidy. The finance model for the primary, for what we're income eligible and criteria, is to have it built.
Because what I mentioned before is eliminating that fourth floor, eliminating the mansard roof, reducing the occupancy, and therefore the parking would work. But then you said you can't get the funding if you do that.
Well,
You're
right.
reducing your overall cost, right? So
We'd be reducing our overall cost a little bit, but it's a high cost project no matter what. And we thought adding the fourth roof was very appealing to, we thought it would be appealing to the community to be able to bring back the historic nature of it. But it may reduce it a certain amount, but it wouldn't, it's still a high cost project.
even if you eliminate that occupancy on that floor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to figure out
Yeah,
ways that
sure.
things will work here.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate the question.
Joe, I think from the historic credits that come with this project, if you eliminate the Mansard roof, you eliminate the interest of a lot of the funding sources for the tax credits that come afterwards from restoring an historic property. I sort of would like to go back to this. I'm kind of new to this notion of land banking some of the parking spots, because I'm happy with 63 spots. But if some of them could be land banked and we go back to 53 or 58 or whatever, that maybe gives us a gazebo back or something, a little more graceful.
Well, the gazebo, I thought we had kind of taken away because that's what we heard last time as well. Is that?
I don't think you heard it from us.
We heard some comments from the planning board about.
Oh, is it planning?
Because of I think it's the gazebo is the smoking area basically. And there was some concerns about
Next to a playground.
next to
What
the
they said.
playground having a smoking
It
area.
isn't really next to the playground.
Right, it was
Well,
more,
we-
but.
We're trying to, we're trying to get,
Yeah.
trying to get input from everybody.
But yes, to
They
answer-
are gonna have to smoke somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, so if the board said, guys, we would like 57 spaces, figure that out and add the gazebos somewhere, I think we could definitely make that. And land banking would be, right, we would hold green space and then if needed, we could put a
You could
parking
build the
space.
parking later.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a smoking gazebo. It could
No.
just be a
Just
gazebo.
the existing one,
Yeah.
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 Can I just remind the board that according to the parking, I mean, most, even our businesses don't have enough parking spots for their building, okay? We just had recently a business add on an addition. We took 9 parking spots away when they were already lacking parking spots for the existing business. I mean, most of our plazas here don't even meet the parking regulations that, you know, they're supposed to have. I mean, so parking
Yeah.
is tough.
I do live in one of those downtown upstairs over a store situations. There's no parking with it because what was behind us in the area that they built those was water. Because there used to be an island back there and the 2 streams of the canal. So there wasn't even a back door in the area they built that, let alone parking. And if you're parking on the main street, you can't park overnight. So, I mean, that describes the whole downtown block, these almost. You know, some of them had a little bit of land behind them, but a lot of them did not, on the water side of the canal.
Any questions from anyone else?
I have one more on a different
Sure, of
subject.
course.
The DHCR funding requires the property to enter into a regulatory agreement for 50 years. And the parking for this project is anticipated to meet the parking required for that. But do we have a copy of that? Has our attorney seen a copy of that 50-year agreement? And is that some standard thing that automatically goes with this? And if the project ends before that, somebody decides that, federal or state level not to fund this thing anymore, then how is that affected? I mean, that's speaking to, what Joe said about, the future use here.
So we would have an offer or a regulatory agreement for this community if we were awarded and went to closing. So that's where it comes from. But for other projects, it's like you said, it's actually pretty standard for the most part from community to community. The funding would be for the construction of it. So if there wouldn't be any funding removed down the road 25 years from now that would say this isn't going to work anymore.
It's not annually funded.
Right, it's to build it.
Right. Because there isn't, the only rent supplement program is through Eagle Star for the veterans living in the community. The rest of the rents are not, they're not supplemented.
So if this building gets sold to somebody else within that 50 years, does this agreement go with them, or does it stay, I don't understand. Is that something our
Right,
attorney
the
should
state would
say?
have to approve it, and we have restrictions on when we could even, I think it's 30 years, where we could even think about selling it.
And the state would have to approve to keep that regulatory agreement in place. They would have to, whoever the buyer would be, if there was a buyer, they would say, you have to sign this regulatory agreement, basically.
The reason why we're providing you information on the regulatory agreement was to try to, for the parking variance, this is going to be here a long time, and it's meeting the needs of the parking. It's not something that's gonna get sold in 5 years and somebody else is gonna buy this and you're gonna have 110 people with cars living here.
That's more common with market rate apartments, they can sell it, but we have certain.
But they are applying for funding and they have to meet regulatory requirements.
So we don't ever get to see a copy of this regulatory agreement and see how that all works. We just have it in a phrase on this paper.
I could send you one from another project.
Is that, I just don't understand the legality of that. Pat,
If that's something you want to see, then
I just wanted to
tell
know.
them you want to see that.
I don't know if I want to see it. I think it's something that, should be probably reviewed, by our.
Okay, well, we don't have that, right now. So if you want that to happen, tell them you're gonna need to see, the agreement that they will be entering into, with whatever agencies involved, and what the limitations on transfer are, and, how long are these groups required to be involved with this particular building.
I think that would be important.
That's certainly, within your ability to do that.
Because that's, goes back to the whole parking again that we're trying to resolve here.
Do you have anything additional, Mary?
That's all right now.
I'm sorry.
That's all for right now.
Okay. Susan, anything?
I'm done. I mean, I would like to add that notion of the land bank parking.
Joe, anything to add? No.
I don't understand
Tom?
how that works.
No, I'm good.
I'll have a couple of things I want to go over real quick. I don't want to spend a lot more time. I know it's taken a while here. I understand. Windows in our code, under arrangement of buildings, each dwelling unit shall have a minimum of 2 exterior exposures. Can I ask, is that requirement met?
Yes, so, we have a lot of windows with this building.
Yes. And I couldn't, going through even the large prints,
Yep.
it's hard for me to determine exactly what you had.
Yep, absolutely. So, I had our architect, he's on the line, but it's probably hard for him to talk, so I can answer this, but, middle units will have, middle units will have 4 windows in the existing Fall Street and 4 or 5 windows in the other section with 15 square foot of clear light. The corner units will have more windows, some might have 10. The units on the garage, the back area where we're building it, they're going to have very large windows because of the design. And there's only one bedroom that would have only 2 windows, but everybody else has more.
Everybody else has 1. I'm sorry.
No,
Everybody else has
more.
Everybody else
More
has
than
more. There's only one bedroom that has only 2. Everybody else has more.
All right. So that requirement being met then?
Yep.
Okay. And landscaping, as far as the recreational area or around the front of the building, is that been met? I don't know.
Yeah, we submitted a landscape plan with
Trees and things like that?
Yeah, I just have those. Yeah, there's, so landscaping is shown on here too. Planting trees up here, trees.
Okay.
There's plantings along patios along this area, along that wall, and then there's trees
Okay.
around.
All
These are mature trees or yearlings or?
I think they're 2-inch caliper to start. But we just did a landscape plan and a lighting plan. They're mainly 2-inch caliper trees.
And more than they have now. That's for sure.
And as far as the lighting plan is concerned, I know mentioned in the material that you have installation in the, at the entrance and in the parking lot. I didn't see a lighting plan, I don't know if that,
There's a
planning board required that.
Yep, no, we submitted a lighting plan with the application as well.
Okay. And the installation of those poles and
Poles
Okay.
along, just poles to light the parking, and then there'll be some building mounted lighting with the entrances along here. But all of it, on the property,
Okay.
not.
it's situated in such a manner that it wouldn't be shining in houses of,
Right, we're shining.
not just the poles themselves, but the intensity of the lamps. Would be a detriment to
They're dark sky compliant.
not just residences at night, but say cars or anything. I imagine something DOT deemed might be addressing as far as lighting is concerned, interference and.
Yes, I believe they discussed last night the lighting
You did, okay.
would be coming straight down.
Cut off fixtures and dark sky compliant.
Okay, all right. And, and the last thing for me is this. Mr. Bowie mentions this in his, it wouldn't be the last thing, I'm sorry. But Mr. Bowie mentions an on-site property manager. Is that something that we could get?
Yeah.
Once I had heard about that, I asked our management team, because I don't make those decisions, and Sarah, speak to that.
Yeah. So we have, in a few of our communities, we do have an employee unit. I always think it benefits the community to have an employee living on site. So we were talking about making one of the units an employee unit, which we are going to do because we've heard you and we agree. That does not guarantee that we will be able to actually, I just don't want to make a promise that we can't keep. So we will have an employee unit and we will absolutely try to have an employee living on site. Sometimes somebody doesn't want to live on site, so we try to hire, to just have a presence. So we are moving forward with that.
Yeah, because I think with, the building we have at the other end of town on Van Cleef Lake, I know it does have a property manager there, and I don't think the population approaches what we're, expecting with your project, which is 55 units, but more people than that. So I think that, the public would be more comfortable having somebody
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that would be on site or close by, but not really great on, I think what Mr. Bovee might be getting at is not having absentee landlords, so to speak,
Right.
quote unquote.
And we'll have a property manager and a maintenance superintendent on site, and then a representative from Eagle Star. And then after hours, we do have an emergency line. It's HL Serve, so it's easy to remember. And if it's not the property manager, the maintenance living on site, it'll be somebody else.
It's something you couldn't guarantee on site, however, you're saying might be somebody you would want to hire locally.
Absolutely.
We always.
Okay.
Yeah, we
hire
always
local.
try to hire local.
Yeah. I have one more thing I want to ask, and I don't know if you can answer it from here or not, but originally, an architect for Mr. Koch, an engineer, had given a report about the building. And in a nutshell, he says there would be quite a bit. Upon review of the inspection notes, photos, and other data collected on the structure, the overall condition of this building is poor. And due to evidence of exterior wall movement, it is my professional opinion that the building structure is not stable and will require substantial reconstruction along with supplemental structural retrofits to just stabilize the building. And it goes on about brick masonry exterior walls, long-term degradation issues with the building age and all. That was his opinion. Now, I asked for a report from your engineer. I received that, and it goes. It says in there that it is a professional opinion with the sites that he's made. To determine, this is from Ryan Filkins of Jensen Engineering, to determine structural suitability for the proposed use. He goes on to say, have analyzed existing floors throughout, and he feels that the proposed residential use will require a surface road, which he states and all. Okay, but this last paragraph, based on this information, I find the existing building to be structurally suitable for the proposed purpose. But please note that as a professional opinion, based on site visits, existing condition scans, and architectural models, it is not an exhaustive structural survey, and there are portions of the structure that are currently masked by finishes. In addition, repairs may be required to be made, you know. Could you address that? And if there are issues with the building that you have to address, that's going to increase your cost.
Yeah, so we speak with weekly on the just preliminary design, and they actually went in and did a little bit of exploratory demo just to see what kind of size the beams are and the condition of certain walls and things like that. He's in my opinion, I guess that's it, is he's very confident that with some reinforcement to some of that we can do with, when we have walls with shafts, because they're built up, reinforcing some of that stuff just to carry certain weight loads and stuff like that. He's very confident, and the Mansard roof was very doable from his perspective. So he may, that last paragraph, I'm not really sure, maybe we just wanted to, he hasn't put his stamp on the structural drawings yet, maybe that's why, and I guess maybe that's where it could come from, but he's always been very confident from...
Oh, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt his, his professionalism, of course. It's just that I was, getting at, I've got, that it's not really differing reports, but,
Yeah.
it's something that I want to take safety, and I realize, but the building's old, obviously, and it does have issues. So, that's all I have.
I have a question about that. It's the whole first floor, the entire exterior wall is painted. The whole entire first level.
Yep.
All the brick has been painted over. Is that going to have to be, is the brick going to be cleaned and are the joints going to be cleaned and tuck pointed and redone? Is all that included?
Yes, I believe we're painting that lower level and doing a lot of repointing on everything with the mortar, I think it's written mortar, and and then cleaning the current brick.
Okay.
That's all part of the project, so clean the building.
I'm just, Michael's not, our architect's also on texting me, and he has said, we will be repointing and repairing the existing brick and then adding additional shear structure to the building. It's better said than what I was saying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. If no one else has any questions or anything, Pat, you guide me.
Okay.
But as far as this is concerned, I would be thinking that we would be considering the area variances before the special use. Or
That's what I would recommend. It's the higher burden between the two, and if they don't meet the burden, then you're done.
so the
So you can, so you are looking at two area variances, one with regard to height, one with regard to parking.
right.
You can do them both at the same time if you wish, because there's five different steps to it, it's right in our code. Or you can do one for height and then do one for parking. Just keep it organized either way you do it.
So if I'm understanding correctly, we take the parking and the height separate considerations.
Yeah, you can, I'll tell you what. So there's five, so let's start off by defining what we're looking at. Dean, you don't have the numbers on the height. What is the height that they're requesting? What's the height that they're allowed? I believe it was, the maximum height is 52 feet.
C2 zone, maximum height of building is 2 stories or, it says 25/2. So 50 feet from R1, R2 residential district. So I guess it would be 25, and I'm not sure what they're asking.
What's the top?
52 feet.
52 feet,
52.
25, so 27-foot difference.
Thank you. Okay. So they're looking for a
So we're talking
double the amount of the height. You know, however, they're not adding.
It's the original height.
It's returning to the original height, and the final height approximates the top of the elevator shaft that is there right now. So it's bringing the rest of the building up to the top of the elevator shaft. So it's not, but it's not going any higher than that. So that's what the area variance is. The parking variance, it would, of the 55 units would otherwise require 110 spaces. They are asking for that to reduce to 63. So, and then whatever conditions you want to have. So that's what they're asking for. So ultimately, for an area variance, what the board is being asked to decide is to take into the consideration the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such a grant. So there's 5 factors. No one factor is controlling. The first factor is whether an undesirable change would be produced in character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties by granting the area variance. Let's talk about height first. Does anybody have any issues with an undesirable change with regard to granting a variance regarding height?
I would say would be, it is consistent with the historic nature of the existing structure for sure. But I can't think of any other buildings or dwellings around it that are quite that high.
I live in one.
You do?
If you're looking at it from the canal side, it's 4
But I'm,
floors.
okay.
And everybody
You're
else
speaking
along
in the
it.
area,
Yeah.
Susan?
And it's, you know, it's walking distance from this building.
Okay, within that.
Yeah.
Does anybody know when the Mansard section was removed? How long ago that was? I don't ever remember seeing it, so that's why I have the
Well,
question.
we're not that old, Mary, come on.
Well, that's what I
I
mean.
got a picture, but
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know what it is.
It's probably a picture from the 1880s.
so there's nobody alive that's very nostalgic about that Mansard.
Well, yeah, there is.
No, I mean, that's actually seen, that's what I
Yeah,
get.
but you've seen it in the neighborhood.
Well,
All kinds of houses.
On houses, yeah.
Doesn't have already dates on that.
I was just curious.
I guess this would be the kind of thing where you would be in individual opinions.
Yeah.
That would change, actually change character, the character of the neighborhood, you know.
Michael just said it was removed from the 30s and 40s.
I didn't think I'd ever seen it, so.
But you're being asked is whether there would be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, or would there be a detriment to nearby properties to change this building from a 3-story building to a 4-story building?
So I guess, you know, if we take into consideration, is the height impeding on neighbors' visibility of, say, the canal from across Fall Street or any other?
You gotta know.
Only if someone's gonna build a 3-story building.
Yeah,
No,
I don't know,
I
just
can't see
throwing it
that,
out
yeah.
there, whether there would be some.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know all that.
To me, it's a hard question to ask, I mean, to answer.
Okay, do you want to consider it the same for the parking?
I'm sorry,
Do you want to consider the same question for with regard to the parking?
yes, right. Well, as relates to the parking part of it, I'm gonna tell you, I think I do have a bit of a problem with it being close to the corner as it is at the intersection there, I mean, the traffic flow, but. you know,
We're not
I
actually
don't know if
talking
it would
about
be-
parking, about traffic flow right now, we're talking about parking. This is the variance regarding the number of parking spaces. That's it. For the special use permit, you can get into the whole layout of the thing, which, you know, there are other factors to be considered on a special use permit. But you're looking at whether or not the number of parking spaces will produce an undesirable change in the neighborhood or have a detriment to nearby properties.
In my opinion, no, there was a parking lot before.
Yeah, and it's a parking lot, it's less of a parking lot now with some amenities, and mine is a no.
I'm sorry, Susan, if you did.
Mine is a no, it's less parking, more amenities, and it's an improvement for the neighborhood. And the way they're curbing and all that, which isn't really parking, it's going to be much safer. So I'm a no, Tom's a no.
I still consider the number of spaces inadequate for the density of the building. That's my concern.
Then I'd have to move on my property, if that were true.
I have space for 8 cars paved where I live.
Well, yeah, you do. It's a long walk for me.
Joe or Tom, do you have, Joe?
I think the parking's inadequate also.
I'm still what?
I believe the parking's inadequate for the building.
So do you think that's going to produce an undesirable change in the neighborhood or cause detriment to nearby properties?
Not a reduced part. I guess we have to address that at another point. As far as the answer to that question, no. I think, Mary, you have to agree with that.
Yeah, I do, I agree with that.
But we'll address the substandard parking at the other part.
Right, okay.
Okay, 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by a feasible alternative to the variance. So we'll start with height. I mean,
No.
part of what got us here is the Mansard roof and the Historic Preservation Commission. And preserving the building in the first place, so it's not a gas station. Which it will be.
I'm voting no.
I don't see a problem.
That there's no problem.
No.
Nope.
Okay, so then moving to parking, is there, can they achieve, can this, the benefit that they're asking for, can that be achieved by a feasible alternative?
Well,
Yeah.
according to the applicant, it wouldn't be actual, but if it's going to interfere with the funding itself, and as Joe's
I mean,
trying to point out, we have less.
in relation to this particular question, the alternatives would be either there's a 50-space parking field, adjacent to this parking lot, or there's not. And secondly, the additions to the, I guess, how much of the footprint to the actual building was altered by the additions that are being made?
We're only adding a little building addition here.
Right. So the footprint of the building
that's there.
isn't, like, none of the additions that you've done, none of the work that you're doing to the building is taking away any parking spaces.
No.
That's
Or pavement.
the point.
We're trying to just take the area that we have and put as much parking as we can in there.
Okay. So, on this lot, there doesn't appear to be, any other alternatives. Right. It seems that they've maximized the amount of parking spaces to get close to what's required by the code.
Would everyone agree with that?
So,
Mary?
I'm
trying to
sorry, I was
get this.
looking at,
I'm sorry.
the footprint of the building is the same, right? So it's,
Footprint is the same.
right, no, so that's not
Yeah.
an issue.
my point is they're not doing anything with their project that is taking away from the parking
No.
spaces. They've, what they're doing the work on the building and they're using the outside, they've maximized the area outside to get as much parking to try to meet the code.
Mhm.
The space just isn't there. So the third would be whether the requested variance is substantial. So starting with height, we talked about the relative heights. It's 52 feet they're asking for. Part of that building right now above the elevator shaft is, probably awfully close to 52 feet. It's picking the remainder of the building, of that portion of the building, from 3 stories and making it 4 stories. So they wouldn't need the height variance if they were just using the 3 stories. Even though it's greater than what our code has. If they were gonna make it go with the existing building at 3 stories, they wouldn't need a variance. But, so their variance is going from 3 stories to 4 stories. 25%, because it's being asked, is it substantial?
I don't think so.
So that's not substantial.
No.
Everybody good with that? Okay, so then now turning to parking. Parking is, instead of 110, they're looking for 63, or you know, whatever you, a number less than that, but that's, you know, approaching 50%.
Well, substantial.
I think it's still substantial. I'm not sure this is where we addressed that, but I still have a problem with the parking.
I'm with you on that. I also agree it's substantial.
I don't have a problem with the parking.
You don't have a problem with this?
No.
Okay. And Mary, I hear that you do have.
Yes, I do.
You said
I do
substantial.
not.
Don't think it's substantial. Tom?
I do not.
You don't think it's not substantial, okay?
And what's your opinion, Dan? You got the sway vote.
I'm sorry, Joe.
What is your opinion?
I think it's substantial, height-wise, yes, I do. But I don't know if it's, no,
We're not on height, we're on parking.
I'm sorry. Is this a long night or is this me? It's a long night.
It's another one.
Okay, so do we want to mark that as yes, it is substantial?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, no one, this is all a weighing, you're balancing things out. No one factor is controlling. Fourth, would the variance have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood? Let's start with the height.
No,
No.
No.
All right, now let's move to parking.
no. Environmental? No. I mean, I'm just casting my vote because I'm getting antsy.
No.
Repeat that again.
So the question is, would the variance have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood?
I'd say yes on the physical.
Yeah.
In relation to both?
Not
Height
the
and
height,
parking?
just the parking.
The
Just the
parking.
parking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then now moving to everybody's favorite one of whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. So I guess starting with the height.
No.
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 And then moving to parking.
Parking's a yes. You
Yes.
reduce the amount of apartments, the parking is sufficient. Therefore, self-created.
I'm yes on that also.
I'm a no.
I'd say yes or both self-created.
The height is self-created.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
You're finishing
it
a
is.
building.
It is, but I don't know if it's really a big
Again, they
deal.
don't have to put this fourth floor.
No, we could have a
Right.
gas station, I know.
Well,
So
it's-
in that aspect, it's a self-created hardship,
Oh.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I need to change mine to that too, because it is.
I don't think it's a huge impact, and I don't have a problem with it, but as far as it just, you're looking, making a decision whether this
Yeah.
is a self-created problem or not, I mean, by just purely looking at
Yes,
that
and
question, they're both self-created.
Yeah, specifically, even if it's not a big deal that they do it, but it is specifically self-created.
Okay, so ultimately, the board is going to find either that the benefit to the applicant here does outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood or the community, and the variance is granted, or the benefit to the applicant does not outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood or the community, and the variance would be denied. And again, you have the option of issuing imposing a condition on an approval, if you wish.
I would make a motion to, that the area variance is
To what, Tom?
I would make a motion that the height area variance is granted.
Okay.
I would second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Unanimous. And that's for the,
That's strictly for the height.
so I'd say along those lines then again, Pat, that would, okay, the special use.
Well, you haven't addressed the parking.
I'm sorry.
You have not addressed the area variance for parking.
Right, and I thought that was kind of taken, but how do we feel about the,
So
Parking, I know
does somebody
Joe-
want to make a motion regarding the parking?
I will make a motion that the area variance is granted for the parking with, is this where I confuse it by adding in
You can put a condition on there.
with the condition that if during their lease period, they end up with 110 cars, they built a little parking garage back there. Otherwise, I really don't believe it's going to be a long-term problem.
Does anybody second?
So just to
Yeah, it's new.
It will be in,
just to clarify what it is that you're getting at and kind of tighten
What
up the words a little
I'm
bit.
getting at is that most likely they are correct, and that for the next 10 years, we won't have a parking problem. People were worried about 50 years. I'm not really worried about 50. I'm worried that the thing gets knocked down and we don't do anything. So I would like to give them the opportunity by approving this parking with the caveat that if it immediately isn't working, in the next decade, I put a decade on there, they would build additional parking and go for a second level back there.
Okay.
And it looks ugly to the rest of us, but there'll be plenty of parking.
Okay, so condition that if in the next 10 years, it becomes apparent that the parking is insufficient for the facility, in the opinion of the town board, the zoning officer, you, in whose opinion would you think
In
would
whose
be?
opinion, I suppose it would be this board since we're making the
Okay,
variance.
of the zoning board of
Where we have to
appeals.
be on it at this point. Yeah.
Then the applicant would need to address the situation by finding more parking, up to and including
Yeah,
vertical.
yeah, they might, in the meantime, they might buy the property next door and it would solve it. I would leave it to them, but, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Is that something, is any board members, okay, so you have a motion. Does anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Tom seconds it. Discussion, any more discussion?
Can I ask the applicant,
Of course,
is that even,
feasible.
is that even something that you guys can consider? Is that something your funding folks can get behind?
Go ahead and take a shot. Do we have to put parking garage in, or can we just put
No,
additional parking?
Additional
Means of
parking.
Additional
No,
parking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying
Because it might not
that it
be,
would find additional parking up to and including
Yeah.
the requirement
Right.
of some type of parking
I just don't
garage.
want it to have to be a parking garage. If
No.
they decide they gotta buy the property across the street and put some parking over there,
Mhm.
then I'd like to leave them options.
You-
Which I think-
Absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think that would be preferable
I
to
just,
everybody.
I was presenting that on the spot, I'm thinking, well, you could go higher up.
But I think we're
Yeah.
okay with the, if it got to the 110, we'd have to find a means to provide additional parking or come back to this board. I think we're okay with that. Right? You're okay, you're okay.
Which is something we would want to do anyway, right?
Well, 10 years is, it's gonna take, I just put the 10 years in because it isn't gonna be an immediate problem. It seems obvious. It is, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know, they have the jobs program and training and, you know,
Yeah,
potential for additional people moving in, which could
you
happen
got
in a
63
year.
houses.
Doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't.
Well, in the
Makes
reality
sense.
of downtown living, where most of us don't really, most of the private owners down there of buildings do not really have, as the zoning officer said, the number of parking spaces that they should have for their building because they were built in the 19th century. There were horses, there was no backyard and so forth.
But if it's a problem within the next year, that's better than if it's a problem 11 years from now. See, if it happens in the next year, then you have recourse, there's something that can be done about it.
Well, did you want to correct my wording there somehow?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to correct my wording?
No, I just wanted to talk it out to.
I just put the 10-year period in
Yeah.
because I thought that was
Sure.
enough time to see what was,
Mhm.
what was really happening.
So is it within 10 years or in 10 years?
Within.
So where do we stand here?
So you have a
We get a
motion
motion and
and
a
a
second.
second.
You had a motion and a second, yes,
So
yes.
Is the wording final? Is it in 10 years? Within
Joe, let's
10
start with
years?
you. I'm sorry.
Nay.
We have clarification on
on
all
the
this?
wording,
Everybody's understanding that? Parking.
I think you gotta say all in favor or all in nay. Or-
Well, actually, we want to do an individual.
Okay, nay.
You
Nay.
said
I'm not in favor.
you're not in favor. Tom,
Okay, yes.
you vote yes. Mary?
No.
No.
Susan is
made a
yes.
motion.
It's my motion.
This is a tough one. Yes.
Okay, so the area variance with the condition, has been approved with the condition that within 10 years, if it becomes apparent to the ZBA that the parking is inadequate for the facility, the applicant will arrange for, additional parking to meet the code. Just make sure there's parking to meet the code, period.
Right.
Okay.
Or else what? I mean, is there?
Well, they're agreeing.
This whole
They're agreeing
thing,
that no
They're
matter what it
agreeing that
takes,
they'll meet the
they'll do
code
it.
if they have.
you're deciding whether or not they can have a building permit.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if they don't meet that, then they would get a violation, a zoning violation,
Which
just
would-
like any other. Okay, so next you would have a special use permit, which is required in order to have a multifamily residential use in a C1 commercial zone. So this is, there are 6 factors to be considered. This is, so there's no specific weighing out as in an area variance, but there are 6 factors for the board to consider. The first is that the use shall be so designed, located, and proposed to be operated that the public health, safety, welfare, and convenience will be protected. Does anybody
I
have
think
any
they
comments
would
on
need
that?
that.
I'm sorry?
I think they would need that.
I do not. The house safety, it's going to be too dense for that corner. Too much traffic for that corner.
I think they meet it.
Consensus.
That was a yes, I think they meet it.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Considering it was a car dealership before it was a repair shop and a lot of action.
But this is peak.
Oh, there were people in all those cars. We have a number of the neighbors thinking it's a good idea and quite a few interested parties in the community.
And there were a number that don't think it's a good idea.
There were 2 that were worried about congestion.
And I don't think the other ones in favor were neighbors, they were interested parties.
Well, one was
It's
a
your vote.
neighbor, one was a family.
The intersection
You
for
know,
me is a problem. It is. I don't know what's trying to weigh the car dealership activity versus this, but, it's not as if we're going to have all 50 cars coming out of there all at once or anything like that. But I mean, that intersection is a problem to begin with.
Well, well, that would come into the condition of just having the south entrance be the way in, and the northern be just for a way out, which ultimately turns that into a bus loop, so that the curb cut closest to the intersection would be out only. So that would be an appropriate condition, ultimately when we get there. But this is the part of that where that comes into play.
But it's not unusual for that traffic to back up past that second entrance now because of the traffic light. So people that want to turn in there to get in there are still going to have problems getting through the traffic. I disagree with your comment.
At least they'd be further away from
They'd
the
be further away
intersection
from the intersection, but
if
it's
it
not
did back
going to
up.
be perfect.
Well, I guess I see it as an improvement. I mean, the building is where it is, which is on a major highway at a corner. And the community was looking for reuse projects. The new design of the in and out for their parking and the removal of the black lawn curb cut are all improvements. Now, if somebody would just do it to the other side, it'd be great. And they could very easily, because you get in and out that gas station from 2 locations instead of the whole curb cut. Also.
Okay, so on the first one, while there are concerns for the health, safety, and welfare, the second one is that the use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood where it is to be located. Does anybody have any issues or comments there?
Seems like a no.
Pam, would you repeat that?
The use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood where it is to be located.
I'd say no. You say what, Joe?
No.
Okay. And then 3, the use will be compatible with adjoining development and the proposed character of the zone district where it is to be located.
I think that's a yes.
I agree.
So, mixed use, comprehensive plan stuff that we talked about.
I agree.
Okay. 4, adequate landscaping and screening shall be provided as required herein. Well, that gets to the whole open space requirements and things like that.
That appears to be a yes to me.
Yeah.
Everybody good?
Yeah. I can't.
Okay, ready? 5, adequate off-street parking and loading shall be provided, and ingress and egress shall be so designed as to cause minimum interference with traffic on abutting streets.
Yes.
I voted yes on the parking variance, and I gotta agree with that. Is that something that we would make as, if we get to that point, the condition, as far as we discussed
Yes.
this change?
Yes. That's exactly how you would address that. You would, if there's gonna, if we're talking about the ingress and egress, the way to do that would be to condition the special use permit on making that, that change, to making that an exit only.
Did we finish that one?
So is everybody satisfied with that?
What, is it your guess?
Can you repeat the
Number 5.
question?
It's number 5. It is that adequate off-street parking and loading shall be provided, and ingress and egress shall be so designed as to cause minimum interference on traffic, with traffic on abutting streets.
No, so I still think they don't have adequate parking.
This is a first, though. This is egress.
With egress, I think it still interferes with that,
Okay.
that intersection.
I agree with Mary.
Yeah.
Dan?
I agree with Mary and Joe.
Okay. And then 6, the use shall conform to all applicable regulations governing the district where located, except as may otherwise be set forth elsewhere in this article, and elsewhere in that article is the part that talks about variances. So the part that where they are not conforming to the applicable regulations, well, this board has already granted variances for the things where they do not comply.
So then that needs to be a yes, because we've
So the
already.
area variances for height and parking have been granted.
didn't grant the, we did, okay, so we did grant the variance for the parking?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so now it's, those are the 6 areas to guide your consideration here. The 6 factors to be considered. Again, no one is controlling, but that's to guide you on this. So we talked about possible conditions. It would be, if you were of a mind to approve it with that condition, the motion would be for approval with the condition that the northern, I guess you would say, the northern vehicle access be limited to exit only. To put in words what we're pointing at the map to say this one right here. So the northern vehicle access shown on the plan would be limited to exit only. Okay. Are there any other conditions anybody else wants to discuss or follow?
Are we considering for the special use permit at this point?
Yep.
So, I think we talked about 24/7 on site.
Okay.
Individual.
Or another way to say that, the way that was presented by the applicant was that one of the 55 units would be for an employee. I guess is that, I mean, you may at some point want to go out to dinner or something. Right, so, but it would designate, so you would designate the unit, but, you can't designate that it's going to be changed.
So we would add that.
So we're up to 2 conditions. Any other conditions that anybody would want to see on a motion?
So we make a resolution now? How do we approve or disapprove what we're doing?
So you make a motion. So I just want to get the conditions in order, so you could say it would be a motion for approval with the condition regarding the northern access point and the condition regarding designating a unit for an employee. But I wanted to try to talk about any conditions that anybody thinks would be appropriate to put here before we get into a formal motion.
Or you would add the parking.
That includes the parking, my parking notion from earlier that we.
Yeah, that's already a condition. That's already a condition on the variance. You could repeat it here on this as well. It's certainly not going to hurt anything.
Well, I'd like to make a motion. With saddened heart for my fellow veterans, I make a motion that this project be declined because of the density in this particular area. And I don't think it'll work for that building. Again, with saddened heart for the building and my fellow veterans.
I'd like to second that.
I'm sorry,
I'd like to second that.
I'm second that.
I would like to speak against Joe's motion. Usually we agree on a number of things, but I think this project, as much as I really wanted some larger apartments, I think this project is too valuable to the community and to our development prospects to let go.
So
I don't see other people lining up to use this building in a better manner. I think the next round would be the bulldozers from the owner of the property. He hadn't kept it up. I'm thrilled somebody wants to. And I think we can make it work. And we can consider that as we look at projects along the line, we come up with some other types of housing too. But I don't see this as anything but an improvement for that end of town, an entryway to our community and the neighborhood.
So that's your yes?
That's why I'm not voting for your motion to decline. That's my no. It's a yes for the project, it's a no for the declination.
We usually agree on things, Susan, but I have to agree with Joe on this because I think it's not going to be housing veterans, it's going to be warehousing them. It's too many units, too many people, and it's high density housing in a small town. And, you know, even though Eagle Star is, you know, going to be doing some transporting and things, I don't think a town this size has adequate services to provide a decent living piece of life for that density and that location.
I would vote nay on the resolution, but I do have very serious concerns about the things that are coming to light most, and that is the density of the apartments. I mean, I've got a little bit of a problem personally with everything seems to be trying to be maximizing how much you can flour you can stuff into too small of a container. But I would vote against this current resolution.
So you're voting no on Joe's?
Yes.
I do have reservations about the density part about it, and Susan, parking, you know, I know it's a solution to that. I would have to vote with Joe. So I guess that makes it a 3-2 decision.
It does.
Is there some tiny thing that you would hear from them that would change this project? Do a yes.
I requested alternative workout plans, and they don't seem to be able to work with it. To reduce the number, so it's not so crowded, make the apartments bigger, but it doesn't work for them. So I don't know what they can come up with. I'd love to see the corner developed. It's a beautiful project. I just don't agree with what they're doing.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What would the number be? I just out of curiosity.
I'm thinking of a maximum of 30.
How about the original 50, Joe?
No.
You're not gonna get the 30.
That was too intense too. And as far as the bulldozer or this building, I mean.
Well, you know that's
the
reality.
But the Seneca Falls Development Corporation, what have they done to go out and try to bring somebody in to develop this property? I mean, it seems like we're just like waiting around for somebody, you know, fairy godmother to show
No, I
up.
don't think so. I think there was some recruitment. I mean, and perhaps they would know better. But I do know that there was some recruitment, and I assume that you knew about the project through both the historic interest and the development interest.
I know there's historic interest, I'd love to see it.
Well, you get a
better
choice.
project.
You'd love to see it.
But this project just doesn't fit, and I'm back to, I don't think it's a good service for our veterans. I really don't.
Can I say something? From the human perspective? I don't understand to say it because I'm pretty passionate about our folks. I have worked with veterans that have been homeless, living under bridges, that look just like you and me, right? They've fallen on hard times, they've lost their jobs, whatever the reason, their wives left them when they were overseas. Very sad stories. But the veteran population that we serve in these shelters are amazing people. And when we get them apartments that they can be proud of, that is like the best part of my job. But unfortunately, the veterans don't have affordable living opportunities. They don't have apartments that they can afford. And so the apartments that we have to put them in are awful. And I've seen them. They're infested. They're not what we want our military folks to be awarded. So to have this project so close and to know that I have 50 homeless veterans right now in our shelters that could use these apartments and live in them and flourish and love and be happy again. It's right here, and it's hard. So that's the human perspective for me. And, you know, we'll be okay, and we'll pick ourselves up, and so will they, because they always do. But this would be an amazing opportunity. And I probably, over my career, especially in the last 5 years, have probably gotten no less than 10 phone calls from people that want to develop veteran housing in Seneca County. And for whatever reason, we weren't able to. They wanted to buy homes, they wanted to, you know, renovate buildings, and they weren't able to. So we have this opportunity. And I know you feel like it's warehousing, but just today, I went into one of our veterans' rooms, and they have a bed, and they have a floor, and their bed has all their belongings on it, and they're sleeping on the floor. And that's because they've been homeless. So it's not warehousing to them. The small space, and not all of our veterans, because that's certainly not the case, but this particular group of veterans prefers that. And they love to be around one another. So I feel like I couldn't leave the room without telling you how passionate I was about the work that I do every day with these folks, and I would love the opportunity to do it in this community.
Thank you.
Could I just add, I know we've already had our,
No,
I know everybody wants to roll it, just on the warehousing, I just wanted to put one last show is the finishes. Sarah's our / interior designer. She picks beautiful finishes. This is just a rendering of what the apartment will look like. We're using historic, the beams are that, I just wanted to make sure that we're not putting in cheap products by any means. They're air conditioned, there's a dishwasher, beautiful flooring, light fixtures and plumbing fixtures, and there's a community room that we offer. Just wanted to put that out there.
I think we all agree that it's a good project that way. It's just the
Yes,
density.
there's no question,
It's just too many people for that small area. I guess I can't adjust to it, that you say that's what they're gonna want, but why can't we just have 30 people in there, and you says it won't work? You had 30 vets in there, I'd be happy as a pig and dog here. But
It's just, it's a balance that we have to,
I know.
and I totally understand, everybody has their views and perspectives, and I wish I could. I asked and we tried, and it was just, that's why we were hoping the parking addition would help, and taking the entrance, and yeah.
And I know we have a solution here, but I'll tell you, I look at the property and I look at the building and agree with Joe that the building just doesn't seem to be commensurate with the use, or the use commensurate with the building. We're trying to tweak parking, we're trying to tweak recreational space, and the intersection itself, there are issues I've got with it.
Totally understand.
But I totally respect where you're coming from, trust me.
And also, totally for Eagle Star, but also for the workforce housing is an opportunity for those folks to call home a beautiful home as well.
I can tell you from my heart, this is the hardest decision, one of the hardest decisions this board has ever had to make.
And it is a common thread that we've heard from the planning board to the zoning board is we have to change our parking code because everybody comes in here asking for lower parking. And
We have to change our whole code. It's antiquated. We have a problem with use variance and median.
But if that's the case, then that's what we're asking. That's what we're asking to do. That's why we're here is for these build variances, because they're antiquated and they're not changed yet.
Well, we gave you the variances. It's the actual.
But the variances are no good without a special permit.
Either got the project or you don't. And some of the alternative projects for this place would have required just as much traffic and just as much parking. They involved apartments on the upper floors and commercial on the main floor. Commercial as in restaurant or brewery, that kind of commercial, which would, a lot of people need to park regularly. They need to drive to get there. And there wasn't, they didn't have the added value of adding that Mansard level and going back to the 1880s or 1870s when it was built. So I think we're missing the mark here, as much as I'd rather have large apartments too.
And it's just our opinion, but we think we're one of the lowest uses. There's 50.
That's probably, yeah.
But they're not all coming in the morning or the day, it's, throughout the day. But
They're not spending 2 hours there, like the restaurant.
My personal opinion was that I thought this was a great project because of the workforce. With today's situation, with the pandemic and everything going on, there's people losing their jobs, okay? They're not going to be able to afford that house anymore. They're going to be looking for immediate income apartments. They're going to have to be retrained in a different job because that business folded. I mean, so I think we really dropped the ball here. And that's just my personal opinion. It's not an expert opinion for my job, but that's just my personal opinion. I mean, I thought we were planning for the future, and with this COVID pandemic going on, I think we're going to need these apartments, but it's only going to get worse around here.
yeah, and like we mentioned last night, that our market study was pre-pandemic, and for literally every 100 people that would be qualified, eligible for what we were looking at, there was only 5 to 6 quality apartments in the Seneca County, top part of the Seneca County. The demand is really strong.
The reality in this community is that half the restaurants will not reopen. We already know that in certain cases. A lot of the smaller stores will not.
And Sarah can vouch for this.
Yeah.
She boots on the ground with folks once we start building, folks start just walking over, like wanting to put their application to find out more, and sometimes they live in the homeless, because it's, a lot of the housing stock is inadequate. And especially, you know, definitely for vets, or a senior who has to walk upstairs that just has a bad hip. We're fully ADA accessible, and we have ADA units. I'm sorry.
So, can we come back to you with any alternative, or is this a full new application? Is there any wiggle room you can give us to come back with a revision or additional information to reconsider while we're still, I think the meeting's still happening?
Well, if it is going to be, you know, if there's something that can be considered the same application, maybe a little less dense or whatever, whatever you come up with, so ultimately, if it's coming under the same application, you would need to have a motion being made by one of the people that just voted against this. Okay, you said 3 votes against your project. One of those 3 people would have to bring it up and make the motion to have it revisited by the board.
Can we ask that you guys make a motion to let us provide you additional information and give us another shot?
Well, there's another part of this, in the sense that if it changes too much, then the process needs to start over. It needs to get referred to the county. The county, maybe they can get a quorum and weigh in on it, maybe not. But procedurally, it's built in time. But then you're not dependent on one of 3 people who just voted against you in order to even get to the table. Okay? It would be, so I mean, it is time and, you know, and an application fee to just call it a new project and say, this is what we got. Because making changes to an application, you know, whether or not there's too many changes to call it the same project is a decision that is ultimately made by a judge, which I painfully just found out not that long ago that he didn't agree with me. When I said, oh yeah, it's the same project, well, he decided it wasn't, and so no.
Isn't it, if the project is less demanding, it should not require? I would think if it's increasing a problem, it would require a further review. If it's decreasing,
whether or not it's substantial. Whether or not it's substantial to cause a change. And here, it's got to be different enough to change one of those votes to a yes, which would probably make it substantial. It's how I'm looking at it. You know, it's not a hard, fast thing.
what do you think you could come back with?
I think what Link was probably thinking is just to keep the window open, because we thought maybe.
Yeah, you know, this isn't something they can just say, boom, you know.
I may be wrong, but if what happens tonight happens, we can't come back for a year, right? And that's, I don't think that's enough. I may have interpreted that wrong, but.
Is that if it's
Well, I think
the
it's
same project?
coming back with the same project. You'd be coming back. You'd be coming back with something different.
We have to come back with we have to reapply for a different application, a new application, different project.
you know, I think ultimately, but either way, you know, if you want to make some changes, I guess the simplest, you know, I'm no architect, but to say, taking some of the studios and linking them together and calling them one bedrooms, whichever, and so whereby reducing your density, whereby reducing the number of parking spaces that would be needed, and getting closer to the code, because now you're less dense, and I think density is the issue, the main issue that affects everything else. You know, if you wanna submit something like that, you know, I'm not tonight sit here and stop you. However, it's going to be up to one of the three if they want to call it the same project and move forward with it. That's going to be up to them, and then we'd have to look at and see what it is. And the question of whether, ultimately, the question of whether it's a new project or some subtle differences on the old project is a question of time and an application fee. Yeah, that's.
Well, I have a problem of giving them that leeway to do it again. I don't know how to word it. Do you
Right.
write an emotion or? And then we vote on it? Is that how it works? I'll make a motion that the interested party resubmit alternative plans.
Okay, to allow the applicant to resubmit plans with less density. Do you want to put a time frame on it?
I don't have a time frame.
No.
As much time as they need.
Okay, I mean,
They have to go through all their hoops to figure out.
yeah, and I'm just thinking out loud that you have the site plan approval, which is the configuration of the buildings and the
Yeah, the building
traffic.
is there and the parking,
Yeah,
The
you
parking
know,
and the height
we're
are
not
already.
changing that, I'm just trying to get us, I don't know if any of this will work, I'm just
Right.
trying to,
right.
I'm just trying to say if we came back with an alternative, can we come back and discuss it with the board, you know?
Yeah, well, I think the board seems very open to that.
I would
And,
second Joe's motion.
I have a question about, would it still have to go back before the county? Because the county never could make any kind of determination or recommendations because of the lack of quorum and the time went past.
Yeah, well, I also learned that that's irrelevant.
So I don't know I don't know how that works.
I think it's been irrelevant for quite a few projects.
It's irrelevant to the court's determination of whether or not something should be sent back to it, is what I meant by that. No, because that was a situation in the last situation. It's a question of degree. It's a question of degree of how much of a change is it, and is it substantial?
Who makes that determination?
A judge.
Does it have to
You.
go to a judge? Why can't it
Initially,
be
it's
the
you.
board?
Initially, it's you.
Right.
And everything you do is reviewable by a judge.
Who says it's gotta go to the judge?
Anybody who wants to complain.
All right.
Well, that complicates it for the applicant too, which, I mean,
That works.
are we better off asking them to make changes to this plan or to just use some of their basic information on the building itself and submit a new plan? That's where my question is.
Is who better off?
For the applicant and the town.
Well, the applicant went and got the site plan approval by the planning board.
As
At
is.
least had to wait for the time for the county board to act. You know, they had 2 seeker reviews involved here. So I would say it'd be better for the applicant to revisit this application. So if that's what you want to entertain, you know, it doesn't necessarily need a motion in the sense that if you do that and it comes back and one of the 3 people doesn't want to, introduce it to the board to consider it, then you're done. So I don't know if you want to do a motion to I don't know, commit the board to allowing a review of a resubmittal. You can do that, I suppose.
Didn't we just do that and Sue second mine?
Well, I can withdraw my second if you want to rephrase it in that manner.
Yeah, what he said.
Yeah, okay. Done, fair enough.
Okay.
You got that?
And then I'll put the second.
The motion?
So we're making a motion to allow them to come back with
Alternatives.
some alternatives. Does that still still require that one of the 3 says yes to
Well, not if you
ahead of
vote,
time?
I guess not if you vote unanimously. If you wanna note you're allowing a review now, it can be.
Okay, so what we're saying is we have a motion on the floor for us to go back and investigate if the density problem can be rectified. Basically, that's it.
Yeah, that you will allow
We will allow them to come back.
Okay,
resubmission.
all right. Motion,
And I was the second.
you seconded?
That was Joe's motion. I was the
Yes.
second.
Joe's motion, you seconded, Susan? Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay. So there you go.
Let's try this,
Well, at least that we can try to see if we can do something and come back
yeah.
to you, and we don't have to go, because the site plan is the site plan.
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense for us to go back through the planning board or HAC has approved it. It really just makes sense to come back and try to see if we can get 3 months here, right?
There's no way from a funding point that governments or whatever won't give you, addition to make this
It's
work.
really expensive to renovate existing buildings.
If we went down to 30, we would get a whole lot less funding. A lot of it is based on, you get a certain amount of funding per unit to build, and then the costs are high per unit.
And it doesn't matter how big the unit is. So if
That's
you make
the
2
key.
bedrooms rather than a studio, doesn't that give you more money?
No.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, especially with the size, the minimum size that they're going with.
It goes back to what, they're saying is, it's homeless people, and this is the funding is for a range of the size of a unit. And that's the range that we have to hit
Well, if we
in order to
have
get the funding.
25 homeless sizes and then the rest of the structure 2 bedrooms, how does that work?
What they're saying
That's a
is,
different
for
funding
the
program.
grants they're applying for, you only get so much for 1 apartment. So by eliminating apartments, they're not getting that extra grant money. They're not considering the rent. They're talking
An apartment's an apartment, no matter
how
how
much
big
of
it
the
is.
grant they can get to rehab the building. Because the building is deteriorating, it's gonna cost quite a bit to
renovate it.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Yes. Second.
I'll second.
Joe, all in favor?
Yeah.
Can I ask my board, Tom, do you want to make